Around here, is this all being
Yeah, you should
recorded?
be careful.
Kevin, I'm gonna a lot of money going it out.
Crotch Brothers.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Diane Meyerhoff, host for tonight's special coverage of live election results. We've been busy here at Channel 17 this election season, introducing you to all the candidates. Tonight, we're going to bring you detailed results and analysis from across the county with particular focus on Chittenden County state Senate races and House contested races. Tonight, we're going to be joined by special guests in the studio as well as interviews at the Democratic and Republican headquarters. Our show is being aired live on Channel 17 and streamed live on the Channel 17 website. Tonight, I'm joined by an astute follower of Vermont politics, Shay Totten, political commentator and board member of CCTV and the Center for Media and Democracy. So, Shay, thanks for joining me tonight.
Oh, thanks, Dan. This is great.
It's going to be a great night.
A busy, long night, apparently.
Apparently a long night, and because
people are actually still voting in Burlington because they were in line when the polls closed
at
and
7:30.
They weren't able to get in yet, so they're still voting. And that's in Burlington.
So as long as you're in line by 7, you can vote. So this could go on for quite a while, apparently.
Right, so we might have a longer night than we anticipated.
All right.
So, you know.
Well, we hope you all stay with us for that long night. Let's talk a little bit about the races that we're going to be looking at tonight.
Sure. So, you know, this is a midterm, but this year, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders is up for re-election. Of course, that race has already been called.
There you go.
In favor. He's already been re-elected. That's AP's called that one. Representative Peter Welch, obviously governor, lieutenant governor, all the statewide seats are up.
Yep.
And then we're going to be looking, more at some, down ballot races, which we'll get to a little bit later.
Sure. Good, good. And let's talk a little bit about the House contested races, because we have a fair number that are not contested, but we do have some left that are.
That's right, and the Democrats statewide really are trying to get what they call a veto-proof majority. So pick up a few extra seats statewide that will allow them to basically override any vetoes from the governor, as we saw from this past election. So
which is what I heard over and over again. We did our forums with the candidates.
Absolutely,
Constant.
on both sides, right?
Yes.
I mean, they're both. This
Absolutely.
was a very much a contested sticking
Absolutely.
point and an election talking point. So Burlington's New North End, South Burlington. We have this very fascinating sort of write-in race in Winooski that we're going to talk about, a rematch in Williston, and then some strong challenges both in Essex and Colchester, where we had some folks retire in those races. So, and then obviously Chittenden Senate, which is the biggest Senate district in the state. We've got 6 seats up for grabs and 13 candidates, and one Republican trying to sort of break the Democratic progressive grip on that district for the first time in a number of years.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually also moderated those debates, 3 hours with 13 candidates. So that was quite an experience. And also, we should also say some of the lower profile races, which a probate judge, assistant judge, side judge, very contentious this year and unusual. We don't expect that.
I know, and we've been seeing that not just here, but in other parts of the state. I think there's been some good, articles on VT Digger in 7 days, and other media have been covering this. But like contested sheriff's races and contested races for high bailiff. I mean, it's just like these county seats have been getting a lot more. But side judge or assistant judge and probate judge, and some of those were very, very hot debates.
They were
on Channel 17.
and I know this because I moderated them.
Right. So while you're waiting for while we're waiting, you can go back and watch some clips, maybe.
Maybe we could do that. That would be that. Yeah, it makes for an interesting watching, I promise. And then we've got ballot items, municipal ballot items.
Right. We got a couple of big, obviously here in Burlington. We got a few big ones.
Yep.
The Burlington schools are up for a $67 million bond to basically rebuild, renovate BHS. There's a very important wastewater bond that's coming up too. Burlington and South Burlington, Winooski, Richmond, and Colchester all have big bonds on. South Burlington's got a couple of up there. A couple of ballot items up there that would basically offer the financing to sort of jumpstart their downtown area.
Right, the new city center.
The new city center, exactly.
Which, and my understanding is actually that will be paid through TIF, the TIF district.
Right, that would be a TIF district, and then there's another ballot item that talks about but land being given
Swapping
up, swapping between the school and the city. So,
yep, good. All right, and we should also let everybody know that Chittenden County results will be on our website at ch17.tv. And if you have questions at all for any of us in the studio A or B, please give it to us via social media. And also this year, the Secretary of State, the Vermont Secretary of State, has a special election site, and clerks are required to actually put the information up on that site. So that should be pretty current, we're hoping.
Yeah, we're hoping.
Yeah, well, right.
But we're already hearing with record turnout and record numbers of absentee ballots that we could be in for for a little bit more of a weight that I
Yes,
think some
yes.
people would be wanting, because I think there's been a lot of pent-up anxiety about this
right.
election.
That's
That I
right.
think, the Saturday Night Live skit, I think, sort of probably hit home for a lot of Vermont folks here about what they're hoping for, for results nationally, not just here in Vermont.
Yeah, and we're hearing Ward 5 let us know that there are still people voting, and they will not have results till before 8:30.
Right, and we know that Winooski race, which is both not really just Winooski, it's also parts of Ward 1 in Burlington, because it's basically a write-in campaign. Those ballots have to be counted as write-ins, and so that's also going to likely hold up some results for Burlington as a whole, which for people who are very interested in some of those bond votes are going to might be also going to be waiting a little bit for both 5 and potentially 1 to come in.
Right, and we should say that race, we should give a little bit more information about that race. So that's the race, I don't know the number, it's the Winooski, it's a district that's Winooski, but a house race, a little bit of Burlington as well.
Right.
And we have Clem Bissonnette, who has been the incumbent, who after the ballots were printed decided he wasn't going to run, or he wasn't going to take the seat if he won. So we have Deanna Gonzalez, who's running again.
Right. Yep, who's running again.
And then we have one more seat, and they've asked that Hal Colston is asked to be put in as a write-in, who did the same thing in town meeting day and became a city councilor.
A city councilor, exactly.
So, but the write-ins is what's going to hold up the ballots, because that's just going to take. I
That's
assume that has to all be counted by hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because those don't come in through the optical scanner the way that you would have if your name was printed on the ballot.
That's right. That's right.
And of course, what happens if Clem Bissonnette gets enough votes to win?
Right.
Well, then that gets flipped to the local Democrats and the progressives will come together likely and offer up some candidates for the governor to choose, and the governor would pick.
Yeah, okay, so that's a race we're going to watch closely.
Absolutely.
We are now going to go to Studio B. We have the help of Brady Tensing and Kevin Ellis, and they're going to look at the national midterm results, and we welcome them. Welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you.
Thank you, Diane.
Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the national race. What are the issues that we're looking at?
Well, I think sort of nationally, in a macro kind of way, this is obviously a referendum on Trump and whether or not Democrats can take over the House and the Senate. And the conventional wisdom is that they take over the House and they don't take over the Senate. I think there's a lot of wishful thinking going on in the Democratic Party myself, but.
Well, no one can rely on a poll. We learned that in the last cycle, correct? Right. If you look at the internals of these polls, they recently had a poll that I looked at, and on the internals, they needed to call 30,000 people in order to get 600 responses. Right. I can't imagine answering the phone if it's not someone I know. So I don't know who's answering these phones and giving their poll results, but I think if the poll results were bad last time, they're probably going to be equally bad this time.
There's a couple of things that I believe, and that is, number one, Donald Trump has changed the game. Whether you love him or hate him, he's completely changed the game. The guardrails are gone on the highway. The norms are gone. You can do anything in national politics now, and in some ways not get penalized for it. Sometimes you do get penalized for it, but I just think the rules of the game have completely changed, and because of Trump. And number two, if the Democrats take over the House tonight, Nancy Pelosi will likely be the speaker, and Peter Welch, the lone congressman from Vermont, is going to have a major role, maybe even a chairmanship in the House of Representatives.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I know they like Congressman Welch, and they liked him before.
Right.
So they're probably going to really like him now. And if you go to electionbettingodds.com, it says the Democrats have a 70% chance of winning the House right now. And the Republicans have a 90% chance of not only winning the Senate, but picking up a couple seats.
Right.
So that's a big deal. And I trust the betting. I trust where people put their money more than I trust some of these polls that are coming out.
Does Bernie Sanders run for president?
Yes.
I agree.
Of course he does.
Yeah, I agree.
Why would he sit on the sidelines when he can get in the game?
So you're going to
have his voice heard.
Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren generation versus a Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, etc. next generation, vying for the the control of the new Democratic Party, whether it comes out of tonight in shambles or looking better.
Well, someone you won't have in that mix is Beto from Texas, because the odds are that he is not going to unseat Cruz, and so he won't have a platform from which to run like Obama did.
Right.
Probably late at night he allowed himself to start thinking about following in that same path.
Right.
But I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
Why don't we talk about Vermont statewide races?
All right, what are the bellwethers?
Well, Bethel is always the bellwether. And I used to live in Chelsea and near Bethel. Phil Scott wins a town like Bethel, it seems to me. I mean, I don't think Phil Scott's done anything this year to defeat himself. You could argue the gun issue. I mean, if there is a Scott Milne moment in this race in which a Christine Hall Quist slips into victory unnoticed, it's conservatives, gun rights conservatives desert the governor.
Yeah.
Moderates go to an exciting campaign run by the first transgender gubernatorial candidate in the country. I don't think she ran an exciting campaign.
I was going to say, I'll agree with the second part of that statement, but it was pretty boring.
So 50, in my old business, a dead Republican got 40%. So Hall Quist gets 42, 46.
And that's one of the ways you can tell that she didn't really get any traction was that the DGA did not spend any money up here.
Yep.
And the RGA barely spent any money.
Right.
So again, following the money, which is usually a good rule to follow, it's not looking like anybody thought she had anything going. And if she had, they would have played majorly here.
Okay.
They want to win races.
That's it for us in Studio B. Back to Studio A.
Great. Thank you so much, Brady and Kevin in Studio B. And we are now going to go to the Democratic headquarters. We have Barry Silver, who's at the Hilton in Burlington. No, actually, we're not going to do that. You know what we're going to talk about, Shay? You and I are going to talk about the races that we can announce because they're uncontested, and we should at least run through those, right? And no, we don't have much else to tell you right now.
Some people can go to bed early right now.
That's right. That some people need to do that. So let's go through the Chittenden County races that are non-contested.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll start off. We have Jericho Underhill, District 3, and I think these are all House races. Trevor Squirrel, Dem, George Till, also a Dem, will both go back to the House unopposed.
Right. And then in Charlotte, Heinsberg, and Shelburne, which is District 4, Chittenden 4-1, Mike Yantachka, Democrat, he'll return to office, no challenge there.
Okay. And in Shelburne, incumbents Kate Webb and Jessica Brumstead, Kate is a Democrat, Jessica is a Democrat Republican, will represent District 5-1 and 5-2, that's in Shelburne. And there is one contested race in the Burlington's North End. We'll talk about that one later. Otherwise, all the incumbents will return. I assume this is from Burlington, including Gino Sullivan, who's the lone representative in 6-2.
Correct. Yeah, and then in the Old North End in Burlington, Joe Krawinski, who's the House Majority Leader, Democrat, and Kurt McCormick, also a Democrat, are in 6-3. And then the neighboring district that also covers the Old North End, which is Selena Colburn, who's a progressive/Democrat, and Brian Chena, progressive/Democrat, and Chittenden 6-4.
And that, by the way, is the election that we're keeping an eye on because we know this is going to hold up some of the ballots. Am I right? Or maybe I'm wrong. No, that's not right. This is the race. This is the district that includes part of Winooski or not?
It does not, but this does include part of, but 6-4 does include part of Ward 1.
Okay.
That's part of the 6-4 is actually is part of Ward 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. South End. Joey Donovan will go back as Dem. Mary Sullivan goes back also a Dem, and that's in District 6-5, and Barbara Rachelson in 6-6.
That's right. And South Burlington, we do have a contested race that we will talk about between John Kalaki, Democrat, and Frank Davis, a progressive, to replace Helen Head, who's retiring. She had been there since 2003. But we have a whole bunch of other South Burlington folks, all Democrats, Martin Lalonde, Ann Pugh, who's chair of the House Committee on Human Services, and Maida Townsend. They're all unopposed, and all will be reelected.
Okay, and there are two contested races in Essex, but in the Westford Essex, which is District 8-2, Robert Bancroft, a Republican, will return to the House.
Right, and and we talked about some of the places in which there were contested county seats. Several of them were not, however, though. And State's Attorney Sarah George, Sheriff Kevin McLaughlin, and High Bailiff Daniel Gamelin will all return to their positions, and they're all Democrats.
Okay, so we just ran through it, all the winners.
That's it, all the winners. There you go. Along with Bernie Sanders,
Yes.
who was called early.
Yep.
Haven't seen whether or not the U.S. House race has been called yet, but my guess is that.
Well, I'm sure
fairly
Studio
soon.
B will let us know as soon as
will
they know.
They're on top of it, I'm hoping.
And
Checking their iPhones now.
we're actually gonna go to the Democrats, but I just want to say we might at some point want to talk about how many of these races were uncontested and talk a little bit about what that means.
Sure.
I think that's
be
worth
great.
a little analysis from Studio A. So we are now going to go to Democratic headquarters, and that's Barry Silver, who's at the Hilton in Burlington, that's on the waterfront, and talk with Ruth Wallman, who's the co-chair of Flip the Vote Champlain Valley.
Ruth Wallman, Flip the Vote, Champlain Valley. So we are back at the Hilton, and I'm joined by Ruth Wallman, who is with Flip the Vote, Champlain Valley. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. We're very excited to be here.
Great. Now tell me a little bit about Flip the Vote, Champlain Valley.
Sure. Well, cast your mind back a few months to January of 2017 and the women's marches.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us went to women's marches all over. Montpelier, I went to Washington, D.C., and we suddenly realized that we had found friends. We had found an emotional support that we didn't know was out there because we were all so bummed. So we met after that in various groups around and said, what can we do? And we paid most attention to Swing Left, which is a national organization, and their focus has been swinging 23, 24 seats from red to blue to take over the House. And so that has really been our focus for the last, 18, 19 months. So there are about 70 of us on our mailing list, but we work with groups out of Montpelier. There's another organization called Lean Left. They are the sister district for Vermont. I know there's a lot of other groups' names, and it's very confusing. But basically, we're mostly women, and we got together and first we groused, and then we said, all right, we have to do something. We can't just sit here. So they came up with the most brilliant idea, which is writing postcards to likely voters, mostly identified as Democrats, but that they were voters from everywhere. There are online places where you can get addresses from all over the country.
Okay, I was going to ask you how you
So
tracked
that's
them down.
we from Sister District, working with Lean Left in Montpelier, we got addresses for people in Pennsylvania, specifically candidate Melissa Schusterman, who's running for the House, and then we found. I think it's Postcards for VA, which was Virginia. There are a lot of terrific women who are running for office in Virginia. And so we started postcarding for them. We've written thousands of postcards, but there's other technology out there for some of you who are natives, as opposed to like me, had to learn this stuff. There's text banking, which is a phenomenal system. My colleague over there, Jean Keller, has been doing that for about a month, where you get hundreds of names at one time, and then you text them with your message, and sometimes you get a response, and sometimes you don't.
Great.
So we're here to basically represent all the women that we've worked with. If people have been reading the Washington Post and the New York Times, there have been a lot of articles very recently about groups like us all over the country. There are hundreds of thousands of us who have been writing postcards not only to candidates, some people have been writing to the administration, supporting the people who are in the background, like the Department of Justice, all those people whose names you don't know, who are, trying to keep the faith. So that's who we are. So we're here tonight, and we're really excited. We're hoping that we see, some of the results from Virginia really soon.
Right. So Virginia and Pennsylvania were
And
the two states
Pennsylvania,
that so there was no focus on the state of Vermont, although you were based in Vermont.
Not
you don't
so
have the
much.
same
I mean, I did some
need to
calling.
flip things.
I did some calling for the Vermont Democrats because I believe in it. But most of us were, when asked, we said, if there was a problem here, of course we would. But where we really need to put our energies is out of state to flip those seats.
Okay.
So.
And how is your hand from writing all of those postcards?
Oh yeah,
How
a lot
many
of
postcards do
cramping.
you
Lots
think-
of cramping. Several hundred over a period of several months.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't all at once. We met every Tuesday night somewhere, sometimes with snacks, and just wrote until we were done.
Well, that's great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that with us. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, we're just hoping.
Fingers crossed and
Yes,
hoping
fingers
that
crossed.
things will
Yes.
that will flip. I
Yes.
guess.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ruth.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yes.
And that's it right now from the Hilton Hotel in Burlington. I think we have another interview coming up with Christine Hall Quist, so we'll bring that to you in just a few moments.
Thanks so much, Barry. That's Barry Silver at the Hilton in Burlington at the Democratic headquarters. So we have just gotten news that we have the Burlington results. It's almost 8 o'clock. The Burlington results will be another hour at least, and that's because there are so many people voting.
Right, and also one of the machines broke down
Yeah,
in Ward 2.
Ward 2 apparently, yeah.
You know, so it's going to be, we're looking at another hour for a lot of the Burlington results. We already are seeing some of the South Burlington results come in, but they're in races that we've already just announced in the last segment, the uncontested ones.
The uncontested. So we don't have any results, other results to share with you right now, but we're working on it, and I'm sure that those machines are working very hard, which is a little frightening to think about, but hopefully they're running hard. So so please stay tuned. We're gonna, as soon as we have the information, we'll get it out to you. We are going to now go to listen to the voters. We're going to go to Ward 5-6 in Burlington, and this is the Burlington High School newspaper. The Register students were out interviewing folks. Did you run into some of them?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of them out there actually when I voted in Ward 3 this morning.
Nice.
It was awesome
Nice.
to see.
Great. So we're going to get to see an exit voices from Burlington's Ward 5-6.
Appalled with what's going on at the national level. I came out to vote Democrat and to vote against Trump, and to say my piece that I'm not happy with the way things are going.
All right. I want to make a difference. I'm young. I'm part of, well, I'm kind of a millennial. I'm 33, so I'm right on the cusp. But I feel like our world today needs a voice for people that can't have a voice, and we need to make it happen. I feel strongly about Sarah George because of the opioid addiction and all she's doing for it and how she's helping the most. I feel strongly about funding for BHS because you guys deserve to do construction and to make this place great because high school is huge. Bernie Sanders. Hell yeah, Bernie. And Christine.
Great.
I
And
think that would be incredible.
Simple democratic participation. This is one of the only ways that I really get to engage in our democracy and kind of voice my right to participate.
Seth Canoyer, our candidate, he's a senior at South Burlington High School. He's a young guy. He's got some new ideas.
all right.
A really good friend.
Well, I work at a local brewery, so the wastewater protection measure was very important to me, so I voted for that. And I voted for Christine.
It's something I've worked very hard to do with this hat on, so yes.
And do you usually vote in the midterm elections?
Always do.
Voter turnout's been crazy. I was up in Ward 4 in Burlington, and there was a line almost out the door. Here, there's been a line most of the day. It's kind of, coming and going, but it's the election officials say that it's pretty insane turnout. It's turnout like a presidential year.
I actually am excited that BHS is going to be doing some work. It's much needed, and it'll help the future of the city, future of the students. So I'm looking forward to a yes on that measure.
And I always vote. I always vote. We all should vote. You should vote. Everybody who's watching should vote.
Oh my gosh, this midterm is so important for us to use our right to vote, which so many people have done so much to uphold, to resist so much of what's going on right now, really resisting the aggression and the terrible rise of hate crimes and hate speech that's been happening. I feel so important to contribute what I can towards shifting that energy.
I think it's important to take part in all elections. If you want to make a difference, then you got to put in the work.
I've been counting the minutes till this election. It's huge. I'm thinking of how to phrase this nicely. I feel like the future of our country and democracy is at stake right now.
Vote Independence. So, what you vote, you do some votes for other guys. If you like, if you don't like, it's up to you. Yeah, it's your choice.
Are you feeling optimistic about the results of Election Day?
Well, I'm feeling optimistic because there are so many people voting at 8:30 in the morning. I think that's fantastic, and I'm hoping that people all across the United States are fully engaged in this way.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Well,
yeah,
thanks for
we
doing
heard there was
this.
a big line out front this morning, which they had never seen before. So
That's great. I hope that's true everywhere. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we're back at Studio A, and we want to let everyone know we are waiting for results. There's been a big voter turnout for this election, and there's a broken ballot machine in Ward 2 in Burlington. So we're going to be another hour or so before we're going to get results from Burlington. So hang with us.
That's right.
We're still going to have excellent commentary and analysis. Anything we can analyze, we're going to analyze for you. So we are now going to go to Republican headquarters. Matt Kelly is at the Doubletree in South Burlington, and hear from Anya Tinio, the U.S. congressional candidate.
Anya Tinio, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Your first candidacy, your first time running for office. Thank you so much for serving as an inspiration for young people throughout the state.
Thank you. I certainly hope they were inspired by it. I've enjoyed the run, and I think that it's important for the younger generation to become involved, because eventually we're going to have to be, so we might as well get started.
Your first candidacy, were there any surprises to you or for you running in a statewide office like this?
Well, definitely something like this is a learning curve, but I was well prepared. I had a lot of people that talked to me about it ahead of time, and pretty much was what I expected it to be, so I'm happy with that.
Some of the issues that you raised are on candidates' minds. Can you talk about the issues that were specific to you and that are of concern for you going forward and for the state?
Well, definitely what I talked about was a Second Amendment, constitutional rights, economy, and agriculture. Those are still the issues that I feel the strongest about. I started out with those issues, and those issues are still pressing to me. If I am elected, those will be the focus that I have in Washington, D.C. And I would hope that if that is not the case, that the person that is elected, Mr. Welch, would have the same focus and would try and work towards the betterment of the state in those areas as well.
The poll numbers, unfortunately, aren't, that favorable for you coming out on top tonight. Should that be the case, what's next for Anya Tinio?
Well, definitely I'm going to work tomorrow morning, and I will continue in politics. I'll have to look at how that looks for me, but it's something that I have a passion for, and I will continue with it.
Your final thoughts on your race for the 28th U.S. Congress seat here for the state of Vermont?
I have no regrets. I did everything that I wanted to do. I said everything that I wanted to say, and it's ultimately up to the voters. That's the American way, so I'm looking forward to finding out the result.
No regrets here in South Burlington from Anya Tinio, candidate for U.S. House of Representatives for the state of Vermont. For all of us here in South Burlington at the GOP headquarters, I'm Matt Kelly. Back to you in the studio.
Your first roll-ins?
Thank you so much. That was Barry Silver from the that was Matt Kelly from the Republican headquarters. And as you can see, Shay Totten has left me, but look who I have, Seth Leonard, Mayor of Winooski. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. What a night, too. You can feel the energy out there,
right,
huh?
Right? Yeah. Same thing in Winooski. Burlington is there's still lines and all kinds of stuff.
I don't have the exact numbers in my head, but I think for the presidential election, we had around 1,800 voters. Okay. And in Winooski,
oh, yes, somebody told me that, yes.
We're going to come up to 2,800
2,800.
I mean, the energy out there to show up even at 6:45 at night and see a line.
Yeah.
It's moving, inspiring, and really exciting.
Great. And you are actually counting your ballots and having luck counting those ballots, unlike in Burlington, which they're having some trouble, I guess, giving us the final results here. So good for you.
And we've kind of gotten a pattern here of writing campaigns in the city of Winooski.
So tell us what's going on.
So with the news that Clem Bissonette was stepping down from his House seat after everyone had done their work to get on ballots for the various
and they were printed and ready to go?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
He decided to step down from his seat, and in doing so created obviously a vacancy for the city of Winooski. Hal Colston, who's currently a city councilor, I think a well-known member in our community,
Yes.
former Vermonter of the Year,
Yeah.
and just all around tremendous citizen, stepped in and ran a really valiant writing campaign.
Okay. Okay.
We fell a little short tonight in terms
Okay.
of the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I think we ended up around over 900 on the count.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens? So Clem was reelected essentially, but will not take the seat. So so what happens?
That's a good question.
Okay,
And
okay.
it will now go to the governor's office. I mean, by law, by statute, now the governor has the opportunity to do an appointment for that seat. So we had 2 people on the ballot running as a Democrat and a Democratic Progressive. We did not have a third party of a sort on there too. So we had 1,777 folks or absent ballots too, where people didn't vote. So basically they undervoted. So I think that there's probably a pretty good argument there that the people of Winooski spoke pretty loudly.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing today, right, is the 2,800 people showing up at the polls. That does make a write-in campaign, I think, pretty challenging, though, when you think about trying to get out to that many folks who maybe aren't as attuned to some of the local issues in politics, because they might be more focused on the national names.
So, and now do the Democrats and progressives get together and come up with a couple of names for the governor? How does that work, or do we know?
No, I mean
No, we
it's
don't know.
it's
Okay.
it's a gubernatorial appointment. So really the process is in the governor's hands, and I guess we'll see who that will be by the end of this evening.
Right. That's right. That's right. Okay. So we've maybe a new governor, maybe the incumbent governor, and they'll get to make a decision about that seat in Winooski. And I assume that has to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, and again, from a timing perspective, as long as it's filled and they're available for swear-in, my understanding, again, in seeing some other seats filled historically, is that can vary a little bit too. And I would assume it will also depend on if you have an existing administration versus an incoming administration. So if there's an incoming administration, I think in historical cases, and historians out there, maybe Senator Ruth can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been deference to the incoming administration in those cases. So we will wait and see, obviously with great interest. Winooski has 2 members of the House of Representatives, along with a little slice of Burlington over there too. Maybe around 100 voters or so from across the river get to participate in our process too.
And we haven't seen those numbers yet.
That's correct.
So,
So, but there's a 280 some odd vote, I think, or vote split between where Hal's write-ins, or where the write-ins were. We can't confirm the numbers particularly for Hal, and where Clem's were. So it is a fairly big gap from that perspective. So we'll have to wait and see how the process unfolds now, and we'll be looking eagerly to Montpelier to see what signals we get on that. And obviously the city will make sure our citizens are represented well.
And we should say that Deanna Gonzalez will go back, has been reelected. So we do have one piece we can definitely say that we know for sure.
That's right.
So we should say that. And also, do we know anything? You have a ballot item. It seems like a fairly minor ballot, housekeeping.
The school did
is that
mostly
fair?
housekeeping items on their charter. That is, though, it can't be on the state ballot, actually. For a charter change like that, it's got to be on a separate one. So there's a separate block of papers. And again, with this many write-ins, you can imagine volunteers when I left were
Oh my goodness.
we're
Okay,
doing
so
the
we
counts
don't
as
we
we
don't
go.
actually know that yet either. So
They've
we're
been
in a bit of a holding pattern here, aren't we?
pretty good night ahead of them to make sure everybody spelled Hal's name correctly who did write-ins. And
Good point.
Yeah. So,
Good point.
So,
You really want a name like Smith, don't you, in that case, don't you?
but then doesn't that highlight too the unsung heroes of the night for all of these amazing turnouts nationwide are the people that make those elections go so smoothly on the ground. I can't say enough about the clerk for the city of Winooski, who's done this for 30 plus years, Carol Barrett, and the entire team of people who volunteer their time in a lot of cases, just as the pieces, to come out and make these elections work for people. It's an amazing thing to watch.
Yes. A big thank you. A big thank you to them. Yeah. And a big thank you to you for coming over. We really appreciate it.
It's always fun. And
great
it's
to
an
hear.
exciting night with a great buzz. So thanks for all CCTV does, obviously, to help make sure the issues are known to people and our candidates get an opportunity to speak to folks. We can't say enough about what you guys do at Channel 17 to give our residents access to information so that they can make informed decisions. So thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And in the same light, we've been out at the polls today talking with voters, and we're in Winooski. So we're going to have an Exit Voices talking to the voters in Winooski.
This election especially is very, very important. Our very democracy is at risk, and I'm scared for our country. So I'm really hoping that we will reclaim it by voting and coming out in droves, because I know the majority in our country are not wanting this direction.
We feel that this is an election that is going to send some signals that matter on the national front, so even local races matter, I think.
Really excited about Hall Quist, so I'm glad I was able to vote for him and write him in, make sure that he is able to be one of the state House representatives. So.
Well, I'm here. My sister from Morocco visiting, and it's her first time coming to see how it is the voting here.
Very cool.
And for we can make the difference.
Everybody needs to get out there and vote. You can't complain if you don't vote.
I hope everybody in other states gets out to vote. That's what I really hope.
I'm for pro-life things, and I think there are far too little of those. And I think we should have more pro-life agendas.
Sure, it's so easy to feel helpless and to feel like you're not doing anything in these times, and it's very exciting. There's people voting for the first time today, and the whole nation is energized. It feels very different than 2 years ago.
We all got to do our part, especially men, especially white men, and this is the chance to put my money where my mouth is. Oh, this here is from Hal Colston, because I plan to write him in.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank
you.
you.
Can share your thoughts too.
Go
if
vote.
You want.
So whether it was raining or shining or snowing, I'm glad I'm here. And I love all this community smiling here and encouraging everyone in this privilege we have.
This is voting the country, because you must be choosing who you want to do good job.
So you felt like it was your responsibility to
Yes,
vote.
yes.
Just a very few words. Let the best man or person win.
Thank
That's
you
all.
so much. Take care.
I'm going to vote Democrat across the line
Okay.
because I don't appreciate what Trump's doing.
You have to feel like, personally, I feel like I have to contribute something to it, and regardless of how it goes, you do have to make your voice heard for the greater collective move forward.
It's just part of my responsibility as a citizen is to try to stay up on, on issues and to make sure I'm knowledgeable and aware of the candidates that are running. So I'm just very excited about the whole thing.
Future voter.
Future
That's
voter.
awesome.
Yeah. It's all about choosing who we want our leaders to be.
Just feels good to do my civic duty.
I feel like I came out to vote more for the overarching theme of what's going on in our country right now. So.
Absolutely. I think it's more than ever come down to the individual responsibility to go out and try to make the change you want to see in the world, and I think that's what brought us here today.
And that was Exit Voices in Winooski. And I'm back with Shay Totten.
I'm
Thank
back.
you for coming
I know.
back. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you very much. Big shout out to DJ Lou. They're live streaming this feed, on WBTV. So it's great. It's great. So if you're driving and you can't watch us on your iPhone, you can listen to us.
That's excellent. Great. We're everywhere. We're streaming. We're live on TV. God, we can do everything. So as long as we can.
Except give you results.
Except give you results. Well, we don't have any control over that, but we're working on. We're hoping we're going to get them soon. So hang in there. In the meanwhile, we are going to go to the Democratic headquarters. Barry Silver's there at the Hilton in Burlington, and we're going to hear from Sharon Panich, the Gun Sense Vermont, at the Democratic headquarters.
So we are back at the Hilton, and I'm joined by Sharon Panich, who is the communication lead for Gun Sense Vermont. Sharon, thank you so much for talking with us.
My pleasure, Barry. Thank you.
So I know, gun violence prevention is a big issue. It was a big issue last legislative session, and you had some significant success with passing legislation.
We did. It was actually sort of beyond our wildest dreams. We had a lot of real advocates and champions in both the House and the Senate, and the bills were signed. We have expanded background checks now in the state of Vermont. We have some laws in place to help protect people who might be a threat to themselves or to others. So we're making progress. We're getting there.
And that was a bipartisan effort. We're at the Vermont Democratic Party headquarters,
Yes,
but
yeah. It was a bipartisan effort. Largely, the most outspoken champions were Democrats. However, we did have some support across the aisle for sure. A lot of people went out of their comfort zones and supported the bills, and we're grateful to all of them.
And so what are you hoping will happen next? Because that bill did a lot, but I'm sure there's more that could be done certainly to prevent gun violence.
We are looking to the next session and beyond. We are still making some decisions about policy direction, but we have every intention of continuing to move forward and help make Vermont safer for all Vermonters. And we look forward to working with the winners of tonight's elections. And we are, again, very grateful to everyone who supported the bills last session.
And if someone wants to learn more about Gun Sense Vermont, where should they go? What can they do?
You can take a look at our website, gunsensevt.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, yeah, but the good place to start is the webpage.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Keeping us posted on what you're working on.
All right. Thanks.
Take care. So that's it with Gun Sense Vermont. Back to you.
And that was Barry Silver at the Democratic headquarters at the Hilton in Burlington. We're now going to go to the Republican headquarters. Matt Kelly's at the Doubletree in South Burlington, and hear from Lawrence Zupan. We're not going to go to Lawrence Zupan. That's okay, because while close attention is being paid to the composition of the U.S. House and Senate, 36 governorships and more than 6,000 legislative seats in 46 states are up for grabs today. This is a big day, and we are very lucky to have Brady Tensing and Kevin Ellis in Studio B for an overview of statewide and the national picture. Studio B.
Actually, we were going to start with Paul Poirier, but let's go to the governor's race first and say that.
Yeah, note the Waterbury numbers.
Won Waterbury by 200 votes, and they have a very strong Democratic committee that's very active, and so that's not that big a surprise, but it's the fulfillment of the Scott plan.
And I think it shows a strong tradition in Vermont of splitting tickets. People routinely go in and vote for the person rather than the party, which is a good thing. But let's talk about the other results.
So the legendary career of Paul Poirier, well, one never knows because Paul tends to make comebacks, but Paul Poirier has lost his House seat in Barrie. So that's a Democratic pickup of a seat because Paul was a Democrat turned independent. And as some viewers, older viewers will know, Paul was the House Democratic Majority Leader in the 80s. He was legendary Speaker Ralph Wright's top lieutenant and ushered in a plethora of liberal initiatives. Ran for Congress in 1988. I'm taxing my memory here, and beat Peter Welch in a primary, and then went on to lose to Peter Smith in the general election.
And then Peter Smith went on to lose to Bernie Sanders in the next election.
2 years later.
Yeah.
So for Paul to lose, and lose badly, is, I bet he'll be sad, but it'll be time to pick up the pieces and move on. But that's possibly a legendary Democratic career over.
Well, but he ran as an independent this time, and then the two Democrats took the seats.
Yeah, so this it's pretty clear that we're headed towards the Democrats in the state House of Representatives having a veto-proof majority. So they're going to be able to dictate terms to the governor in a way they could not previously.
Do you think they'll be able to keep their caucus together?
Yes.
On everything?
Not everything, no. And again, the current Speaker of the House, Mitzi Johnson, has to prove that she can win her seat, which is not assured. But my sources told me in the last few weeks that she began spending money on other races, writing checks to other candidates. So out of her campaign funds. So I get the sense that she started feeling safe in her seat.
Okay, so Governor Scott likely loses his veto protection. Do the Democrats overplay their hand like the New Hampshire Republicans did recently, and then they ended up losing their majority? What happened? I mean, I know that Democrats in Vermont probably never lose their majority again, but certainly they could lose a lot of seats if they overplay this.
Mitzi Johnson is not a radical by any means. She's a consensus builder. She's a policy wonk. She's overwhelmingly responsible in my experience with her. And so therefore, I think not. I mean, will they have the usual internal squabbles and battles about blue dogs in the caucus versus progressives versus the liberals from Burlington? Sure. But in the end, she garners a hell of a lot of respect in that caucus. So prediction? No, I don't think they overplayed their hand.
Well, Howard Dean said that his toughest people to deal with were people within his own parties, the progressives, and so we'll see how that works out for Mitzi. She may not want this majority either. It's a sizable majority.
It is true that the bigger your caucus goes and the more power you have, the harder it is to keep everybody under control. But yeah, they'll want to do things that they haven't been able to do. Minimum wage, family leave, all those things that the governor either vetoed or kept repressed in concert with some Democrats. Yeah, they're going to, the left wing of that caucus is going to push for these initiatives for sure.
They may have to pick and choose though, so they don't get so they don't look too extreme. But maybe they aren't even thinking about that at this point. They're just going to get what they can.
I guess that's true, but my question always is with Democrats in Vermont is what penalty do they pay for doing what you say? If they overplay their hand, what's the penalty? It's not like they're going to lose control of the House.
So does Scott then do symbolic vetoes that then get overridden?
Yes. And you can only override him so many times. It's pretty rare, I've watched, They overrode Jim Douglas on same-sex marriage, and they overrode him on the budget in the same year. But it's hard to override a veto. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting.
Okay.
For sure.
Studio A.
Thanks so much. That's Brady Tensing and Kevin Ellis in our Studio B. And we are now going to go to Deborah Bilodeau, who's the Vermont Republican Party chair at Republican headquarters. That's Matt Kelly at the Doubletree in South Burlington.
Bilodeau, Vermont Party Chair for the Republican Party. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Election 2018, give us an overview on behalf of the Republicans. What are we expecting here tonight?
Well, we're watching some races that are very important to us. Obviously, the governor's race. The lieutenant governor's race is also very important to us, and we have high hopes on that. We do have a few senatorial seats that we're looking at, but we also have some House seats, Grand Isle being one of them that I'm very interested in. And other than that, we're going to have to wait and see what the data is at the end of the night.
Earlier this year around the primaries, State Senate President Pro Tem of the Vermont Senate, Tim Ash, indicated that he wants to, if he returns to the Senate this year, he wants to bring to the floor an initiative to make the governor a 4-year term. What do you think about a 4-year term for the governorship of Vermont?
Well, I'll be honest with you. First of all, I believe in term limits for all candidates. Yeah. But I think a 4-year term would actually be a good thing. I find it very difficult that candidates win a seat and then within a year they're campaigning again. They really spend more time, too much time campaigning and less time attending to the duties that they're charged with. So I like the idea of a 4-year governor.
Do you think that that also should kind of apply for less political positions statewide, maybe, you know, like the treasurer or the auditor of accounts or things like that, or is it just a governor, you think?
I think for the time being, I would support the governor having a 4-year term, and I say that for either party. I'm not just saying it for the Republican Party, I say that for either party. I'd like to see them have their seat a little bit longer than 2 years before they're out there doing this again.
Yeah. Your final thoughts on election 2018?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Deb Villadue, party chair for the Vermont Republicans statewide here in Vermont, live at South Burlington GOP headquarters. I'm Matt Kelly. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Matt. That's Matt Kelly at the Republican headquarters at the DoubleTree in South Burlington. So we're waiting for results. We're anxious for results. I guess all we know right now is in Winooski, Deanna Gonzalez will go back to the House from that district, and the other seat was won by Clem Bissonnette, but he will not take that seat.
Correct. So at that point, the local party will have to put up some nominees, and the governor, whoever he or she may be, come January, will be the one to choose who gets in that seat.
And that's unfortunately all we have to share with you right now in terms of results, other than the uncontested seats. But let's talk a little bit about the contested seats.
Sure.
Let's talk about state senate in Chittenden County. So we have 6 seats and 13 candidates.
I know. I know.
That's a big one.
That was a long list of names to read through in the polls today.
It was.
That's right. So, and what's interesting is that the 6 Democrats or Democrats/progressives, progressives/Democrats, however they sort of shake themselves out. They've run, last time and this time, as a team.
Yeah.
Really.
As a block
of all for one for all. And there's been a lot of attention paid to the Republican Alex Ferrell, who they believe is the Republicans believe is their shot to sort of retake the one slot that had been
Diane
held.
Snelling slot.
Right.
Yeah.
Like before that, it was like, she was there, like her mom was there, like this one. Peter Brownell was there. It's
right.
In fact, I think they even had 2 seats at one point.
Okay.
But it's always been like one seat has been like this Republican seat.
Yep.
So I think they're hoping for that this time, and we'll see. I mean, it was Chris Pearson. I think is probably the one who's probably the most nervous out of the 6 because he was number 6 last time around.
Yep.
And I think that's what we'll be looking at. But
win or lose, I think we'll hear more from Alex Ferrell in the next elections. Yes.
I have a feeling. I Yeah. I mean, I feel like he's one of the sort of younger Republican candidates who we're seeing running not just here in Chittenden County but also other parts of the state who I think are kind of the new face of the Republican Party in some cases, or at least a younger face.
Right, and of course that Lauren Glad said we're just all getting older, so everyone seems younger. But indeed, yes, he is a young person.
I don't know what Lauren was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know either. And Alex is from the New North End. Lives in the New North End of Burlington now. He's been involved in various committees and such.
That's right.
So I think we will hear more, and as soon as we have results, we'll share them with everyone as well. And I think now we're going to go to the Democratic headquarters, and we have Christopher DiMezzio, who's the communications director for the Vermont Democratic Party, and that's Barry Silver at the Hilton.
So we are back at the Hilton, and I'm joined again by Christopher DiMezzio, the communications director for the Vermont Democratic Party. And Christopher, last time we spoke, the room was a little bit different. The feeling in the room has changed a bit. It's still early on, but it seems like there is a bit of a blue wave potentially happening. Can you enlighten us and let us know kind of what's going on both in Vermont and then in other parts of the country?
Sure. Well, I think the energy in this room is emblematic of the energy around the country for Democrats, up and down ballots all across the country. You're seeing early races called already in the East Coast for Democrats, and you're seeing Democrats being competitive in races that maybe they shouldn't have been. Specifically, I'm talking about Beto O'Rourke's race. You see 18% or so reporting, and he's up by 13 or so points. It's early, but it's a good sign.
So you're feeling hopeful, obviously, and it seems like you're not alone. There are a lot of people in this room. I can feel that energy here.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy. I think Christine is bopping around right now. She came down a while ago, and I think she is still in the room. So we're excited to have her here. We're excited to have all the supporters here, and we're excited to get this show on the road.
Are there any other candidates that you've seen here at the Hilton so far?
Yep, State Treasurer Beth Pierce is here. I'm told that Senator Leahy is in the building, and I believe Senator Sanders is also in the building.
Okay. I believe that I saw that Senator Sanders' race was called pretty early on.
Yes, CNN had called Bernie Sanders' race at 7 o'clock on the dot, the moment the polls closed here in Vermont. That should come as no surprise to anybody, and we surely expect Peter Welch's race will be called anytime.
What about Beth Pierce? When will the Vermont results start coming in?
Sure, the statewide results are coming in now. It's really at the discretion of how quickly the town clerks are getting the numbers together and at the Secretary of State's office. You'll see at the bottom tickers of the televisions that some of them are coming in as we speak.
And will there be an issue with absentee ballots and counting those, or there was a lot of early voting that happened in the state, is that right?
Sure, yep, there was a lot of early voting. I think the Secretary of State reported today nearly 70,000 early votes were cast in the state of Vermont, and those are being counted right along.
And what about a sense of turnout numbers in general?
Turnout's generally been good. I think it's been emblematic of the state. High turnout is going to be a good barometer by which to measure Democratic victories.
All right, great. Well, as we said, it is early on, but it looks like maybe another race has been called. I don't know whether that's in Vermont or elsewhere in the country, and we'll look forward to hearing more good news, I guess.
Yeah, we look forward to a long night of celebration.
Great, thank you so much.
No problem.
So again, that was Christopher DeMezzo from the Vermont Democratic Party. So obviously there's a lot so far for the Democratic Party to look forward to and to celebrate happening later on tonight, and we'll be bringing you reports as the evening continues. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Barry. That's Barry Silver at the Hilton in Burlington with the Democratic headquarters. Since we don't have results yet, we thought we'd talk about some of the contested races we are watching, or we will soon hopefully be seeing. So these are contested House races. We're going to start in Burlington. This is District 6-1, which has 2 seats. They're the new north end of Burlington, Kurt Wright, Republican, and first-term legislator Carol Odie, a Democrat, are challenged by Bob Hooper, who's a Democrat and a Democratic activist, but he was endorsed by, Mayor Weinberger endorsed Kurt Wright over the Democratic challenger, Bob Hooper.
Burlington politics is never anything but interesting and sort of confounding to people on the outside, going like,
huh?
Is a Democrat like endorsing a Republican?
Right.
You know, I mean, Kurt did endorse the mayor in his most recent re-election campaign.
And then before that, ran against him.
And had run against him. So I think they've gotten to know each other a little bit, and now he's the president of the city council.
Yes.
So but this is, Kurt only won this district last time by by fewer than 25 votes. It was like 12 votes or 20 votes. It was close.
Wow.
And Joanna Cole, didn't campaign very hard the last time around, and so Bob Hooper has been campaigning hard. So I think that this is one of those seats that the Democrats are kind of hoping that they can pick up. It's one of the few sort of pickup seats really in sort of Chittenden County, because most of the Chittenden County seats are holds for them. So they're pickup seats to get that veto-proof majority that we heard. We heard Kevin and Brady talking about earlier. This is one of those seats, and so we'll see. Once we get Burlington votes counted at some point, we'll probably get some of those results
before midnight.
But Kurt's a formidable name out there. He's been on the ballot a number of times and has been reelected to city council.
The president of the city council now,
and the legislature.
So let's talk about South Burlington, open seat. Yes.
Yes.
1 seat.
Yeah, Chittenden 7-3. This is the seat that was vacated by Helen Head, who retired. She'd been there since 2003, I think, so she'd been there for a while. She was the chair of the House Military, General Affairs, and Housing Committee. John Kalaki is a Democrat. Many people know him as the now former executive director of the Flynn Theater. Very well known, also as a political activist, but also just in terms of arts. And Frank Davis, who's running as a progressive. So we'll see how that race shakes out.
Okay. And Williston's pretty interesting. We have 2 incumbent Democrats, Terry McCaig and Jim McCullough, and Joy Limoges is back, challenging them. I believe she challenged them earlier. I know she also is on the select board now.
Correct.
So that and was on the planning commission as well.
Right. She came close in 2016.
300 votes shy.
Right. Just a few hundred votes shy. So certainly I think a lot of people will be watching. Whether or not this is the year. blue wave, red wave, whatever the waves, whatever the color waves are.
We're not
we'll
sure the
see.
waves are actually happening, but we're...
Or they're
we're-
even going to happen at all,
Right,
so
right.
we'll see.
And we should also say that there's also an independent candidate too. Kathleen O'Ryan is also independent running in that race as well.
Great.
So Heinsberg, Bill Lippert.
Bill Lippert, that's right. Bill Lippert, who's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He's been in that House seat since 1994.
Wow. Yeah.
Long-time incumbent, very active, very prominent Democrat, being challenged by Republican Sarah Toscano, who's really been known as a gun rights advocate. So has really came up, as we heard earlier, too. I mean, one of the pieces of legislation that Phil Scott signed that certainly was applauded by a lot of Democrats and liberals in the state was, the suite of sort of gun rights. The sort of gun regulations that passed the legislature this past year. So she's running against Bill in that seat. So we'll see. But Bill's had some challenges before, so I think he's probably likely to be
Safe.
reelected, but probably a pretty safe seat.
And I should also say that Sarah Toscano also was involved in recruiting a lot of statewide candidates statewide
Right.
under the gun rights advocate banner, shall we say?
Correct.
So yeah. Okay. Essex. 8-1, Linda Myers.
Linda Myers,
Republican, been there since 01.
Been there since 01. That's right. Been very well known figure, as was her husband, who had also been elected to the same seat prior to her. She's being Betsy Dunn, the Democrat, who it was a split district, so a Republican is a 2-seat district.
Okay.
A Republican and a Democrat had it. Betsy Dunn is not running. Mary Beth Redmond is running as a Democrat, and then Tanya Vyhovsky is running as a progressive / Democrat in that race. So the Democrats are hoping to at least hold that seat, but potentially pick up a seat there if they can.
Right. And they're sort of taking the tack of a fresh face, fresh voice for Essex, sort of against the incumbent who's been there for a while.
Been there exactly.
So we've heard that before.
They're trying that, and Tanya was, one of these sort of young folks who sort of grew up in Essex, moved away, now has come back and is trying to sort of build and start a sort of career and a life back in her hometown and serving, in political office. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Good. All right. Let's talk about 8-2. That's Essex 8-2, right? Okay. 2 seats.
2 seats, right? Dylan Giambattista, who is a first-time legislator. He had worked under Shap Smith, during those veto overrides that Kevin was talking about earlier. Dylan was working with was the chief of staff, and Lori Houghton, who's a junction trustee and a first-term legislator, and they're being challenged by John Brennan, a Republican. So, who's really concerned about more. Sort of on the Phil Scott lines of concern about economic growth and also sort of keeping the state's fiscal house in order. Okay. So we'll see how that goes.
So 2 incumbent Democrats and 1 Republican
challenged by 1 Republican. Okay. Correct.
So Colchester 9-1. Jim Condon's former seat.
Right, Jim Condon's former seat, who recently passed away, and incumbent Kurt Taylor is running for re-election in that race. So there was 2 Democrats in that seat, in those 2 seats before. Seth Chase is the other Democrat running, and then 2 Republican challengers, Desiree Morin and Clark Sweeney, are both 2. And in Colchester is one of those seats where actually, in either 9-1 or 9-2, I mean, Republicans could actually. This is one of the places where they could actually sort of staunch some of their losses that they might see in other places. Because Colchester is, a fairly conservative district. Even the Democrats within Colchester tend to be sort of more the blue dog or sort of more conservative Democrats. So it is one of the places in Chittenden County, like Milton, Colchester, where Republicans can sort of potentially pick up seats.
Okay, and so we should talk about 9-2 then.
That's right. Maureen Dakin stepped down. 21 years she'd been there, long time. Yeah. Pat Brennan, who's also been on there for a long time too, but the Republican, again, this was a split district, Democrat and Republican. Pam Loranger is going to be running as the other Republican. Then you have Herb Downing and Sarita Austin, both running as Democrats. And so I think that's going to be again Democrats are sort of hoping to hold one of those seats there, and we'll see if they're do just that.
Okay, and we're moving more conservative districts. Milton's next.
Right? This is Don
seats.
Turner's old district.
Right. He's of course running for lieutenant governor.
Correct. And there we have the other incumbent Republican, Chris Matos, and then is joined by a fellow Republican, John Palisic, and then Democrats Todd Bulk. Is also running for one of those seats as well. So Democrats didn't have as much of a challenge there, but they're maybe hoping to pick up 1 seat. But that's a tough district for them.
Yeah, and one more district, the Milton district that overlaps Grand Isle, Chittenden County.
That's right.
This is interesting. Yeah. So Mitzi Johnson.
That's right. Speaker of the House, Mitzi Johnson. There's been a lot of money poured into that race. There's this, sort of harkens back to sort of the days when the Republicans did all they could to kind of pick off Ralph Wright when he was House Speaker. And
it's quite a statement, yes. If you do pick up,
I mean, it's like it's a big statement they can make if they lose everything else, and they lose their veto majority, but pick up, and sort of and unelect the Speaker of the House. They can sort of that's sort of a big deal. Early numbers coming in. Does it look like that's going to happen? It looks like Mitzi and Ben Joseph, who's the other sort of seatmate in that 2-seat district that includes that, look to be in the lead so far. But with as many votes that still have to be counted, we just don't know. But at this point, she's looking safe.
Okay, all right, and that's our rundown of. We talked about both Senate and House contested races.
I know, and all those uncontested races.
And all those uncontested.
Now we just need ballots to be counted.
But in the meanwhile, we're going to go to the Republican headquarters, Matt Kelly at the DoubleTree in South Burlington, and listen to an interview with Don Turner, who we just talked about.
Great.
Don Turner, thank you so much for joining us here today. Your first statewide race. What's the takeaway for you from this effort?
It's been a great experience for me, honestly. I've met a lot of great people around Vermont. Our team has performed very well. We've worked in the last 4.5 months. We've started with nothing, and we've got an incredible team. We raised a lot of money that Vermonters were willing to invest in this race. I think we've done a lot of good things. It's going to be a very close race, which we've been predicting for quite a while. I just don't know. It's just gut-wrenching right now to not know where it's going to turn out. But it's been positive. We won towns that we thought we would win, and we knew we had it to win. So that's been positive so far. But overall, I want to thank Vermonters for coming out to vote. We did everything we could to get people to come out to vote, and I just hope more of them vote for me than my opponent.
Yeah. I got to figure when you get to this point, there's such a relief because all the anxiety of all the countless hours of campaigning are over. But actually, this is probably the most nerve-wracking because this is when the results actually come in.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been working hard, and I've not been distracted by any reports or any polls or anything like that. So it's good, but right now we're going to know. Yeah. So it's good. It's good.
Was there anything that you heard on the campaign trail that maybe isn't getting a lot of press, that isn't being heard out there in the public?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, people. I think that there is an affordability crisis. I've heard it over and over wherever I went. So I think that we got to focus on that, whether I win or not, and I'm positive, I'm very hopeful that the governor wins, which looks like it will be a win. Yeah. So, I'm very proud of what the governor's done so far, and I'm proud of this campaign.
Yeah. So, Don, if things don't go your way here tonight, what's next for Don Turner?
Well, I've got a great job in Milton, and, I plan to go back and focus my efforts on my manager job in Milton. We're going to do we got a lot of exciting things planned for Milton. So I'm going to go back and do that, which is what I was planning on anyway. I'm hopeful I'm going to win, and I think it's close. It's going to come down. It's going to be a late night, I think, but at the end of the day, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished as a team, proud of my family for the support they've given me, and proud of everything that we put into this to show Vermonters that they had a real choice for Lieutenant Governor, and that will be a positive takeaway for me forever.
A lot of pride here tonight, and that's the takeaway from the GOP election headquarters in South Burlington with Don Turner. I'm Matt Kelly. Back to you in the studio.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt. And we are back at Studio A, and we do have a result to report.
We have a result. We were just talking about the contested races. Chittenden 6-1, which is Burlington's new north end. Democrats were hoping that would be a big pickup for them, that's a seat held by Kurt Wright, and they did it. So they did pick up that seat. Kurt Wright lost by about 120 votes. Carol Odie was the top vote getter with, it looks like 2680 total. And Bob Hooper came in, was the second, obviously, because it was 3 people, with about just under 2,000, 1999. And Kurt Wright was at 1833.
So Bob Hooper and Carol Odie will be going to the legislature from District 6-1 in Burlington.
Right, which is largely the new north end, pretty much.
Wards 4 and 7.
Pretty much 4
right?
and most of 7. All of 4 and most of 7.
Okay, most of 7. Okay, so we did have that. We have a little bit of results coming in. Hopefully that means we'll have more from Wards 4 and 7. In the meanwhile, we're going to go back to the gentlemen in Studio B, Kevin Ellis and Brady Tensing, to talk about national and statewide elections. Studio B.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to talk about what the bellwethers were for the Republicans coming into tonight. We didn't even have Kurt Wright on our list of bellwethers because he's been there for so long. We never thought that he would lose that race. It really is shocking. And as you said during the break, what does this mean? How big is the majority going to be? But even still, I mean, just waiting for other races that are still our bellwethers. Joy Limoges in Williston, she's popular. She almost won last time. She ran a great campaign. We'll see. Addison 4 was a bellwether, but we've lost Addison 4. Valerie Mullen and Fred Baser, gone. Manchester.
Fred Baser was a popular guy.
Yeah, that's
a big development.
So this is going to be this is one I thought was always safe was Heidi Sherman, but Stowe's reporting now that they have a higher turnout than they had in the presidential election year in 2016. They expect 50% turnout. And I don't even know how to do the math on that. And I don't think Heidi knows how to do the math on that and what it means.
Keep your eye on Scott Campbell in St. Johnsbury as well. If I have it right, Jansen Wilhoit left his seat to run for Attorney General. Scott Beck is a popular Republican, but Scott Campbell, this is a Democrat. This is his second run. Old friend of mine, actually. So I don't know if we have a blue wave yet, but there's something going on, and we should talk about what's going on. I'm looking at the national map, and it's looking like Florida. Things are trending Republican in Texas and Florida and maybe Georgia, but it's too early to say that. It's almost like Vermont is having a knee-jerk anti-Trump spasm.
Well, they're expressing themselves in the down ticket ballots.
Yeah.
They're rewarding Phil Scott for his strategy and his tactics and how he's approached the national political scene, it's going to be really interesting. And Don Turner is, this is for an incumbent. It may be that Zuckerman. I'm surprised that Zuckerman doesn't have this totally in the bag as an incumbent. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But it may be that people voted for Phil Scott and Don Turner together, and then down ticket really made a statement about against the national political scene.
Phil Scott and Don Turner are good guys. It's hard to vote against them. Put the gun issue aside because Phil Scott signed a gun regulation bill. The right-wing gun guys didn't like it in Vermont, and some of them probably deserted him, but where else are they going to go? And it's really hard to give people a reason to vote against Phil Scott and Don Turner, because when you meet them on the street, in your country store, or in a bar, they are your neighbor. Don Turner's a fireman, for God's sakes. He's, there's no reason to vote against these guys. There's no obvious reason to vote against these guys.
Well, so then what? But he didn't give an obvious reason to vote against Zuckerman. And I know that's...
you mean Turner?
No, Turner did not give a reason to vote against Zuckerman.
Exactly.
So
he didn't make the case.
He didn't try.
Right.
And so the niceness may have been too far.
Exactly.
We'll see. Or maybe he pulls it out. Yeah. Phil Scott ran a totally positive campaign and didn't say one negative thing about his opponent, which goes against normal campaign tactics and the accepted wisdom.
But if he had, it would have been a huge mistake to criticize the first transgender gubernatorial candidate in the country. Massive tactical error, which he didn't make.
You mean on her policies?
No, well...
I think that he owed it to her.
The race was in the bag. Why? What? Oh, okay, go ahead.
He owed it to her to treat her like any other opponent.
Sure.
and call her out. And I think in the debates he did that. And I think as an incumbent, Peter Shulman was able to do this too and run a positive campaign, and it goes to the power of the incumbency.
One more point about the governor's race.
Yeah.
People always underestimate this. It is really, really hard to run statewide and win your first time out. Sue Minter, Christine Hall Quist, any number of people. Why? Because you make mistakes. You're working 18 hours a day, you're exhausted, you're balancing your family life, you have a job, you're trying to run a campaign, raise money, do all the things you have to do. It's really hard to do it. And Phil Scott is a really good politician. He's been at it now for quite some time. I think I heard him say, this is my 10th election. The guy is a pro. He's skilled. He knows how to raise money. He knows how to meet people. He knows how to run a campaign. And we always underestimate that. People think you can just go out and run first time and win. And you got to be Barack Obama to do that. And that's rare.
And I think Paul Heinz made the comment once, why do people who, the first time out, always want to be governor? Why don't they start as a senator?
That's right.
But in Vermont, I think there is sort of a lower wisdom, piece of wisdom that says you have to run twice in Vermont to win.
Absolutely.
You got to lose once and try to do as well as you can that first time.
That's right.
And then maybe you have a good chance to win the second time.
Ladies and gentlemen, back to you.
Great, thank you very much. That's from Studio B. That's Brady Tensing and Kevin Ellis, our political commentators. We are now going to go to Congressman Peter Welch. He's making a speech at the Democratic headquarters, Barry Silver at the Hilton in Burlington.
Well, first of all, I want to thank our senior senator who's been serving us so well for so long, Patrick Leahy. Patrick, where are you? In Marcel. You know, when you think about it, the first Senate vote to end the Vietnam War, Patrick Leahy cast that vote. And every time a tough decision was required, Patrick made the right one. Patrick Leahy, thank you for being the conscience of the Senate and the conscience of Vermont. Thank you very much. And it's an exciting day, but before I get to that, I really want to thank all of the folks here, all of the campaign staff workers, all of the interns, all of the citizens who believe that every 2 years, as tough as it is to get involved in a political campaign, political campaigns and elections really matter. The worst thing that we can believe in politics is that it doesn't matter. That's the worst thing. And I'll tell you, if I ever had any question about does it matter, it happened a couple of months ago when I went down to the Texas border. I went to the Texas border because what we saw at that border was a government policy that was in your name, and it was in my name. Your name and my name, the authority of the presidency of the United States saying, we are going to take children from their parents in order to have a border wall, no matter what. And what this election is about, across this vast country of ours, with all of the different people and all of the different groups and all of the different aspirations that we have and all of the different challenges we face, the question is, are we in it together, or is it winner take all and you're on your own? That is the simple question that America is deciding across this land tonight. And what this election is about, very simply, you know, I met a former Marine at one of the campaign rallies that we were doing with Bernie Sanders. And he came up to me and he said, Peter, I'm with you all on the issues. I want health care for all. I want affordable college education. We've got to address climate change. But he said, Peter, what this election is about, this is a Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan who knows something about service. He said, this is about our democracy. The guardrails of democracy are under attack. We're for a free press. We are for the rule of law. We are for respecting people no matter their race, their national origin, their sexual identity. It doesn't matter. We are in it together, and that's what this election is about. And I'll tell you something. We're starting to see the election returns coming in. We don't know enough, but I'm getting optimistic that we are going to have a Democratic House of Representatives at the end of this night. But let me say something. Yes, we will be a break on President Trump and some of his worst policies, but I'll tell you what our challenge is. It is to do things that need to be done for working families, whether they are from Vermont or Oklahoma, whether they voted for Clinton or they voted for Trump. They deserve and need lower prescription drug prices. They deserve and they need affordable college education. They deserve and they need an opportunity for their kids to learn a trade so they can be independent and self-sufficient and emotionally intact. That's what we need. We need a policy, if we win, and I believe we will, where we show that we are all in it together. That is what we're about, and that's what this election is about. And across this land, if we get that mandate, our promise to the American people is we'll be there for you, we'll work for you, we'll listen, and we'll act. And we will be judged by what we do, not by what we say. So thank you, each and every one of you, who at this time of enormous anxiety in our country have decided that you've got the will, you've got the heart to hang in and fight and contribute for a better day. Thank you, Vermonters.
And that was Congressman Peter Welch at the Democratic headquarters in the Hilton in Burlington. We do have some results to report for you, and that is that Kurt Wright has lost his seat in the Burlington's New North End. And here are the numbers in front of you. Kurt Wright had 794 votes, about 30% of the vote. Bob Hooper will take that seat with 839, 31%, and Carol Odie, 1,063, so she won about 40% of the vote. So Carol Odie, the incumbent, returns, Kurt Wright, the incumbent, has out, and Bob Hooper will take that second seat in Burlington's New North End. We are now going to go to, no, we're not going to go to the Democratic headquarters, but we will go there soon. Other results we have is in Winooski, we know that Clem Bissonnette had actually won the seat, was voted in, but he's not going to take that seat. And Hal Colston does not have enough write-in votes to win that seat. So that seat, that election, that perspective will go to the governor to make the decision, and he or she will make that decision themselves, hopefully with the help of both the Democratic and the Republican Party. We are now going to go to listen to Lawrence Zupan, who's at the Republican headquarters, with Matt Kelly at the Doubletree in South Burlington.
How does a man become worthy of such an introduction? I don't know that I am, but thank you, Zachary. Thank you very much. A few minutes ago, I spoke with Senator Sanders, and I thanked him for the campaign, and I acknowledged that the numbers seem to be in his favor, and I wished him a long, peaceful, happy, and healthy life, and he thanked me for a campaign well run. But first and foremost, to pick up on what my son Zachary said, tonight I thank my God and my Heavenly Father for bringing me to this time and place. In my face-to-face debate last week with Bernie Sanders, moderator Jane Lindholm asked me, Mr. Zupan, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing America today? I was almost astounded at the question. Did you ever play softball and one is lobbed right down the middle and it's slow and easy and the ball looks 10 times the size, and you know when you bring the bat around you're going to hit it out of the park? It's just because it was the exact question I needed to say what needed to be said. I said, the answer is simply this. The reason why I entered the race for the U.S. Senate against Bernie Sanders and the answer to your question are exactly the same. The biggest challenge facing America today, I said while looking at Senator Sanders, is the success that he has had in persuading millions of Americans that America is not the greatest country in the history of the world. That is what impelled me to stand up to race against him. My friends, I've taken as my personal mission in running against Bernie Sanders, win, lose, or draw, to reinvigorate, restate, reaffirm what most of us from my generation have always known. The United States of America is, was, and likely will remain the greatest country in the history of the world. And by inference, by standing on our principles and revving the same engines of success which have brought us this far, I've got good news for you. Our greatest days are still ahead. As I am so fond of saying, and as I reminded Bernie Sanders face to face, the United States of America and its free enterprise system has fed, housed, and clothed with freedom more people in the shortest time than any other country or system in the history of the world. I'm so happy to say that. And conversely, Senator Sanders' stale and tired system of socialism has caused more want, lack, suffering, despair, stifling of the human spirit, and death in the shortest amount of time than any other misbegotten system in the history of the world. So what are we going to choose? So the rest of the reason is simply this, why I got in the race. It was time that somebody stood up and said, wait a minute, like that child did in the story. Emperor Sanders is not wearing any clothes. If, with all due respect, if by clothes one means ideas that work. He was not wearing any clothes of ideas that work. He's wearing ideas that have failed every place that they have been tried. In our debate, Senator Sanders, when he was sputtering out of a response to what I said then, which was very much what I just said now, and when I compared his ideas to the suffering of Venezuela, where people were dumpster diving for dinner, he said, well, why do you compare my ideas to Venezuela? Well, it's because they're the same ideas, Bernie, but why don't you compare them to the Scandinavian system? And I don't know why no other politician, because he said that so many times, why no other politician has responded to that before or has been cowed into silence by the Scandinavian response. But it was my pleasure, privilege, and honor to say, well, Senator Sanders, the Scandinavian countries are arch capitalist systems that have accumulated the wealth for their welfare state, to the extent they have one, by capitalist, private, property, free enterprise principles. The same ones which for their tiny little 5 million person countries have made our 326 million person country the greatest and most successful living enterprise on planet Earth. So, tonight, my friends, though I don't have the honor of standing before you as your senator-elect, my head is unbowed, knowing that I have performed my mission to declare that which has always been so obvious to me, even while it was being denigrated by Bernie Sanders. You know, I also asked Bernie Sanders, you might enjoy hearing this again if you didn't hear the debate. I asked him in our debate what advice he would have, now that he is a millionaire selling his books on Amazon, what advice he would have to young folks who would also like to be millionaires like him. I think the irony might have been lost on him as he proceeded to give, on TV, millionaire advice. I listened. After all, this is the man who has made a career by railing against the millionaires and the billionaires of American society. So there he was, and I felt this was sort of a precious moment in my life that I always cherish, even though I was in the heat of the moment and the debate, and I was intent, and I was in the field of battle of ideas. I said, oh, yeah, I can't wait to have grandchildren to tell this one. Because what came next, he said, he took the opportunity, in answer to my question about how to be a millionaire, to talk about his book, Our Revolution. Now, who would have known that Bernie Sanders could have a career in capitalist marketing and hawking his book on, you can't make this stuff up, on VPR no less, you know, that bastion of free enterprise. On VPR, he's talking about how to, he's hawking his book, he's selling his book. I said, wow, he's, you know, he's being a free marketeer for this moment. You can't write a script like that one. Anyway, here is the message I gave him that day, which I would like to share with you all again now, when he was talking about his book, Our Revolution. I asked all of those who had bought his book while they were in the middle of reading things to go back and read something else. The founding principles of our two documents, the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution, which were birthed out of the first revolution, you know, the American one.
So you just saw Lawrence Zupan light himself on fire and ensure that he will never be elected to statewide office in Vermont by going off on a rant instead of politely congratulating his opponent, Bernie Sanders. What do you make of that? I mean, he
was
rookie mistakes.
Yeah, it's his first race ever. It's a little odd to have your first race be a Senate race, but traditionally should have, you know, given a nod to Senator Sanders on a race well run and moved on and thanked his supporters and not going back to a stump speech that we've all heard. But hey, I guess he didn't feel like he'd had an audience before, so now he got to try to sell it again.
So you're a high-ranking Vermont Republican Party official. How do you be a Republican in today's Vermont? How do you actually do that? Phil Scott is actually the guy. Jim Douglas and Phil Scott have shown how to do it, but it's really hard.
I think it's changing. I think you blamed the president for everything, and that's fine if it helps you cope. But the internet has ruined everything, and social media has ruined everything, and things have become coarsened, and it's only getting worse. And people become more polarized.
You started it.
I personally did. I didn't start Twitter, though.
Let's argue once for 30 seconds about what started this, because on my drive from New York today, all I listened to was podcasts about this subject, and I will say that it started with Gingrich.
In '94?
In '94.
Mm-hmm. With a contract with America?
Yes, when he took down House Speaker Jim Wright. And it coarsened, and it led to Sarah Palin, which led to Donald Trump. I used to blame Reagan, but now, you know, gosh, for me, Reagan's like the halcyon days, right? I mean, so I do peg it. I say it started with Gingrich. I don't know.
I say it started with a certain governor from Arkansas who came into office and brought Arkansas machine politics to the national level. I think we all are to blame for this.
We have our skeletons, right?
I mean, we look at this, we look at, people, when they go low, we kick them. I mean, there's an incitement to violence that's happening on these outlets. And maybe, is it to get attention? What, do you need to do that? Phil Scott's showing you don't need to do that to win a race.
Correct.
So, at least in Vermont.
At least in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine.
Yeah, Sununu.
Small states, New England traditions that are holding firm for the moment.
Well, we'll see.
Our money is I got Peter Welch's people all mad at me when I said in 7 days recently that it's virtual criminality that a guy like Peter Welch has to go spend a third of his time in some windowless office in D.C. raising money. But that's where we are. Rage fueled by the internet, money completely out of hand, and we judge these campaigns by how much money have you raised.
And so now that we've got this reaction in Vermont, and again, back to Stowe saying they have a higher turnout than they had in 2016. So now there's going to be a super majority of single party rule in Montpelier. And what's going to come from that? Is the compromise that normally comes from a vibrant two-party system will not have to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have as good a result.
Yeah, from your point of view, I agree. But we're going to have a paid family leave bill, and we're going to have a $15 minimum wage bill on the governor's desk. Seems to me.
And then what does he do with it?
Well, he's not going to get defeated if he vetoes it, in my view.
You mean they won't overturn his veto? Or he won't pay if he runs again?
They're going to have to decide which of those bills to put on his desk, it seems to me. I don't think you can put both. I think
if you're Phil Scott's people, starting, maybe you take a day and enjoy the win like the Patriots do.
Right.
And then you start reaching out and starting to compromise on these issues right now, starting to mend fences, because I don't think they have a choice.
That's right. This will be a huge test of Phil Scott's ability to be a good governor, right? Howard Dean was a good governor. He could, we both have disagreements with a lot,
I will take Howard Dean today.
Yeah, I thought he was too fiscally conservative, but by and large, whatever.
I thought he was just right.
Exactly. Good governor. He ran the state with integrity and honesty, and the trains ran on time. Phil Scott, same thing. Now he's got to prove that he can work with the Democratic majority. We are being told that we have to throw it to the Bernie Sanders speech, the Bernie Sanders victory speech. Is that where we want to go?
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Let me thank my family and all of the thousands of Vermonters who played a key role in helping us win this election. Thank you all very much. We don't know what the overall election results for the United States will be tonight. But what we do know is that this is a pivotal moment in American history. And we know that we have Republican leadership in the House and the Senate who have turned their backs on working families in this country, have tried to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have given $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%, and then Trump came forward with a budget that would have made massive cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and the Social Security Disability Fund. But more important than even these terrible policies is that we have a president of the United States who is a pathological liar and is doing something that no president in my lifetime has ever done. And that is, instead of bringing the American people together, he is trying to divide us up based on the color of our skin, based on where we come from, based on our religion, based on our gender, based on our sexual identity. Our job is to tell this president that we will not tolerate policies which are racist and sexist and homophobic. That all over this country, the American people, led by the state of Vermont, are going to stand up and fight back. So I just want to thank my family, Jane, and all of the kids behind me. And I want to thank all of you, and mostly the people of Vermont. Being a United States Senator from Vermont has been the honor of my life. And I thank the people of the state for allowing me to once again serve as their senator. Thank you all very much.
Was Senator Bernie Sanders from the Democratic headquarters at the Hilton in Burlington. We are going to recap results, but we'll also let you know that results are available at ch17.tv, and we will also thank WBTV LP 99.3 for carrying our show tonight live. We appreciate that.
We really do. It's been great. So, yeah. So we do have some preliminary numbers in. We've already talked a little bit about the races that have been settled. I mean, I think Chittenden. We already talked about.
The Senate seats are up right now.
Right,
Why don't we jump into that?
Yeah. So right now, so we talked about this before. We had 13 candidates
13
running
candidates.
for 6 seats, and there was a lot of hope being pinned on Alex Ferrell, the Republican, that could quite maybe get that 6th seat. And Chris Pearson was the one who I think was the most was considered to be the most vulnerable. As you're seeing on your screen now, it's a pretty sizable difference right now between Chris Pearson and Alex Ferrell, at least for that between that 6th and 7th seat at the moment. And a lot of the big towns have already come in, so. Yep. Alex has got some work cut out for him if he's going to close that gap.
So it looks like the incumbents likely will be back.
Right.
From
So
what we can tell.
the six Ds, DPs, PDs, they're all going to the team that they ran on will likely at this point looks like they're going to be reelected.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Great. And we've already talked about the upset in Burlington, Chittenden 6-1 in the North End.
That's right. Representative Kurt Wright, also the president of the city council, defeated. Looks like right now it'll be Bob Hooper, who was the sort of challenger. Carol Odie was the other incumbent Democrat. Both Democrats now, but Bob and Carol won.
There it is.
There we go.
And it's by a pretty sizable amount.
Yeah. Oh, more of a margin. Certainly more of a margin. Bob won by more of a margin this time than Kurt did last time. Over Joanna Cole, who had been in office. So. And I think we can also, we have some, I think we had some before, but we have some preliminary early tallies from the Burlington ballot items, which were out there. We don't have all wards in yet, but we do have, it looks like we have numbers from wards 3, 4, 6, and 7
there you go. There's
at this point.
So at the moment.
Yep, as we see there so far. This is the general obligation bonds. This was the high school capital improvements, the sort of the renovations to BHS, so basically a new high school for much of it. Fairly sizable. It looks like if you have wards like 1, 2, and 8 and 5 out, those generally aren't wards that vote against school spending. So it looks like this Article 1 will pass. Article 2, which was looking at issuing revenue bonds for wastewater. We've seen a lot of beach closures this past summer. A lot of extra work needs to be done. No question, I think that's going to pass at this point,
huge.
even with
Yeah,
it's a huge margin.
And they both only needed majorities too.
They both,
as far as we know, right?
Right. They need a majority, so it wasn't the 2/3 needed with some of the general obligation bonds.
Both of them may have made it anyhow, which is interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think people are seeing the long overdue need for renovations to the high school, and clearly we've been seeing with contaminations of the lake, and a big issue statewide about lake water and clean water. That we're going to make some necessary investments in cleaning that up as well.
Okay, so it looks like the Burlington ballot items will both pass. We have an upset in the new North End. We have Williston. We haven't talked about Williston, Chittenden 2.
That's right. So we talked about this earlier. This was one of the contested races. Incumbents Terry McCaig and Jim McCullough, Democrats. Joy Limoges was challenging again, had come close, and I think at this point. The numbers that we were seeing looks like it was. I think the numbers I have here are Jim McCullough had 2951 to Terry McCaig's 2800 1902, and Joe Limoges was 1980, and Kathleen Orion, who is also in the race,
Independent,
an independent race, had 800,
Okay.
a little over 800 votes.
So the two Democratic incumbents will go back in Williston.
Correct.
And the final.
There's the numbers there on
Oh,
the screen
there they
now.
are. Oh,
There we
perfect.
go.
There you go.
Great.
There you can see them a little better. And we already talked about Chittenden 6-7 in Winooski. Deanna Gonzalez will go back to the House. Clem Bissonette has won, but he will not take the seat.
Right.
And Hal Colston, thank you, didn't have enough votes in his write-in.
Just a humble 100 votes short.
A little shy, so that will go to the next governor
Yes,
to
it will.
decide who will be that second representative from Winooski. And that's what we have at the moment. We'll obviously keep bringing you information as it comes our way. Today we spent a lot of time out with voters, and we are going to go to exit voices from South Burlington, where there was a very high turnout, which we've really seen everywhere from what we can tell. But this is exit voices from South Burlington.
Good morning. Can I ask you what brought you out today?
Voting.
Voting. I'm Nora with Channel 17, and today we are here for the midterm elections, November 6, 2018. Here, interviewing folks, learning what brought them out to the polls today, what was important for them.
To turn our country back over to a place of civil discourse.
Well, you know, voting is just really important. So many people gave their lives for our freedoms that we absolutely have an obligation to know what's going on and get out there and make our voices heard.
There's a lot going on in the world that I feel strongly about, and I don't want to just be like a Facebook crusader and post about the things that are upsetting me, so I'm taking whatever actions I can to make a difference.
Well, I feel like this country is going in the wrong direction, and I definitely want to use my opportunity to vote. I have one vote for change, and I hope it makes a difference here in Vermont.
I'm just thrilled to be voting. I feel emotional about it today.
You feel emotional?
It's like a big election, and it always feels like a privilege.
What do you feel strongly about?
I feel very strongly that we have to show Washington, D.C. in its current form that this is not America, and that Americans are not people who hate and fear. So I'm here for local reasons and also for national reasons and international reasons and the planet and all those things that I care deeply about and worry about. I'm here for you. I'm here for your kids.
And do you feel this year is more important than most?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's pretty obvious by the number of people who are showing up for a midterm election. In all my years voting, I've never seen this many people show up for a midterm. And I think that it's testimony to the fact that we're in a time of great change in our country, and I think we're at a time of great upheaval, and I think that people are starting to understand how important it is to vote. Whatever side you're on, your voice matters.
Anyone local that brought you out today in particular?
I'm a Democrat, so Republicans, as far as I'm concerned, are in trouble.
I'm voting for Christine Hall Quist. I think that's important. Zuckerman, that's important. Bernie, Peter.
Yeah, Dan Gamlin for sheriff, yeah. He helped us out with an eviction. I actually know the guy. I talked to him on the phone, you know, so that was, I felt good about voting for him. Phil Scott I've never met, but I voted for him anyway, and I voted for Bernie, you know. Bernie I've seen at the airport. Yeah. He takes the commuter flight, you know, and he's got no special jet or anything. I like that about Bernie, you know.
Well, I feel strongly about Bernie and Peter Welch. I'm not quite sure with governor yet. I'm torn.
Especially for Bernie Sanders, and that's why I came here. I think fighting for the wage and climate change. He fights for climate change.
Do you have any feelings about the bond towards the city development in South Burlington?
Have to do it.
I support them. I think so long as they're thoughtfully proposed and thoughtfully implemented, I think ultimately the taxpayers are going to be happy with how the money's spent.
Or we should vote for city moving, you know.
The city moving?
Yeah,
Yes, I did vote for the bond. I will say that I'm not a taxpayer because I am a renter, but I do agree that we should be using taxpayer dollars to improve our city so that someday I will be excited to buy a home in South Burlington.
Yes, I am. I live in South Burlington, and I am concerned about the development, the overdevelopment in some areas. I like to see areas preserved in a natural state for the people of South Burlington. I feel like development is maybe getting a little too excessive in some areas, but also supportive of a lot of the things.
The one at the University Mall is nice, but you have to cut through the crowds going to Target now.
I'm a little on the fence. I don't need my taxes to go up, but I also believe in strong education and strong community. So I actually haven't decided. I'll decide when I get in there, I guess.
Do you feel like this is a particularly important term?
It is. It really is. Because that's all I do. I'm glued to the TV. I have Trump-itis.
Franklin, that's why, Franklin County. I don't know why we're talking to him. And hi, we are back. That was Exit Voices. And we are now going to go to Randy Brock at the Republican headquarters. That's Matt Kelly at the Doubletree in South Burlington.
Well, thank you very much, and thank all of you for coming out to this great event this evening in which we hope to celebrate victory after victory going forward. But, you know, I'm not here to talk about tonight. I just want you to remember that if you think that while you were out standing in the rain, waving at cars today, that was the end. It's not. You know, you can be out there tomorrow waving at cars too. Because we're thinking forward right now, and believe it or not, the next election cycle starts tomorrow morning. And as of right now, there's only 728 days till the next election. So this is a continuing act by all of us. And for that to work, for us to make progress as a party, all of you are the key elements, and we really want to thank each and every one of you who participated, who helped in waving signs, who helped in going door to door, who helped in crafting messages, and who did all of the things that make what we do as candidates makes it work. And thank you again. We very much appreciate all of you. Thanks.
Fresh news over the transom, which means Twitter and text from various places. So Vermont Democrats have picked up 8 new seats in addition to the 83 that they had.
So they needed 7.
They're at 91 now.
Well, it's a super duper majority.
Right. That's confirmed by Jill Krawinski, the House Majority Leader. So, and the night is young. So interesting.
A new a shift in dynamics, a shift in strategy, a shift in reality that's going to have to be addressed.
Yeah.
And do you, if you're a Republican, how do you cope with that? As a legislator, where they already were marginalized, and then as the governor?
Yeah, and you have to come up also, because the Republican leader, Don Turner, ran for lieutenant governor and is likely going to lose. You have to go to your bench and elect new leadership in your House Republican caucus. And I don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah, I don't either.
So,
and do you, if you are somebody who would be a good leader, do you want to lead such a small contingent?
Yeah.
And what are the hopes for bolstering your numbers in the next cycle?
Yeah, and you know, comebacks of parties, Democrat or Republican, while they're in the wilderness losing, those comebacks are always engineered by someone who is laboring in the trenches for years and years anonymously and then suddenly bursts on the scene. Newt Gingrich,
yeah,
you know, who led Republicans back to victory with the contract in America in 1994. I don't know who that. I can't see a more bleak situation than I do for House Republicans in Vermont.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you
Right.
there. I'm sure they're sitting there wondering what they're going to do. And I want to. One of the reasons that we had such a challenging cycle was so many Republicans retired because they were disheartened by some of the losses that they suffered, and they just decided they'd rather be at home with their families or doing their jobs or whatever it is. So these sorts of losses build on each other.
So you were talking about the internet and the destruction of our system earlier, and let me pick up on that.
Okay.
You mentioned people wanting to be home with their families.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. So I'll blame Trump, which I do for everything.
And I'll dispute it.
Okay. The institutions, we grew up thinking that government was honest, relatively honest, and did things. It functioned. My view is that Reagan won that argument by saying that government doesn't work, that it's bloated, and it's inefficient, and it's wasteful. And I used to think that Democrats could win that argument, and I now believe that that argument has been lost, that Republicans have won that argument, that government is, and you look at these millennials, these young kids who aren't voting, they don't believe government affects them, don't believe government helps them, and they think government is kind of wasteful and inefficient.
Well, I'd challenge it.
Democrat or Republican.
I'd say our founding fathers knew about the failings of individual humans and wrote a constitution to try to combat government overreach. And I think there's an ebb and flow of that. We have Watergate, and then we had reactions to Watergate that were significant. And then we moved into the 80s. And while Reagan questioned government, I think he built trust in government in the end. And then we've had this cycle leading into the internet and social media, and I think that is the cause for a lot of the coarseness in how we debate.
And I think we're in, I hope you'll agree with me. I think we're in territory that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Good or bad, I'm not sure.
This is, you know what,
This is new.
I can make a prediction.
Then we have to go.
Okay, the next election is going to be the most important election of our lives.
Yeah. No,
they always are. They always are.
I think we're in territory we've never even seen before. So when you have a celebrity walk in the studio, you're told to throw it to Studio A, which I'm going to do, right? Yes. Okay, take it away.
All right, thanks so much. That's Brady Tensing and Kevin Ellis in Studio B, and I am joined by Kurt Wright.
How are you?
I'm doing okay, Kurt. The question is, how are you?
I'm okay.
Tell us.
You know, I'll be honest. You know, I didn't think I was going to come down originally, but my friend Jane Odell is here, and she encouraged me to come down. And I think that I owe it to my longtime supporters to be here and say thank you to my many supporters in the New North End for the many, many years of support, and I thank them for it. My time in politics will end at the end of my next council term in 2020, and I will not seek another term as council president.
Wow, that's quite an announcement.
Yeah,
I think maybe we're the first to have that. That's a scoop from Channel 17. Thank you for sharing with sharing that with us.
It's a clear message that the time has come for me to move on from politics. It's been a great run. It's been an incredible run, and I have enjoyed representing the New North End in Montpelier in the legislature for many years, and on the city council and as city council president. And I asked the question when I ran, when I sat right here just a couple of weeks ago, actually, is the question will be for the voters of the New North End is, do they continue to want a representative who does what they think is right on issue to issue, on an issue by issue cases, and not about party politics? And the answer was no. But I do not think that I lost the support of my longtime supporters. I got incredibly kind comments as I went door to door. Some of the nicest comments that you could ever get. But there's a lot of new voters in the New North End. There's a lot of people, and that's good. But there's a lot of people that don't know me. I think that it's not a good message that's sent. Actually, I think Fred Baser may have lost in Bristol is the word that I'm getting. Who is a kind of a centrist Republican, so I don't think that's a great message, frankly, because I think that the Republican Party needs to be a big tent party with room for lots of ideas and different opinions. And tonight, the New North End and maybe some other places have turned away some centrist Republicans. So I think that's not a great message going forward.
But do you think this was really a reaction to the politics at a higher level?
I think that there's no question that
not
it
as
was,
much about you.
I think that there's no question that there was a toxic atmosphere out there.
Yeah.
I heard it, door to door, and I tried to talk with voters about that. That it's it's different here in Burlington and in Vermont than it is in Washington.
Yeah.
But there's no question that in Vermont, a blue state, that it was not easy to overcome that. Yeah. And I, with the help of a few good friends, I, was running against several different organizations, really. And when it's not easy when you have a machine and you're kind of slugging it out on your own out there with, as I said, with the help of a few key friends to overcome that. But again, as I said, it's been a hell of a run for me. I don't leave with any bitterness. I will finish out my term and do the best job I can for the people of the New North End for another year and a half, and move on to some other things. But it's been a hell of a run.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, I thank the people of the New North End for entrusting me with their this seat for so many years. And as I've said, it's been the honor of a lifetime.
Well, we're really glad you came out tonight, and thank you for saying.
I really have to be honest. I didn't want to, but I do think that I owed it to.
We appreciate it.
I owe it to the people of the New North End to not just be here when I've had good nights, but to be here and to say, thank you to them and frankly goodbye to politics in the next year and a half.
But we may not. You may serve in other ways, I suspect.
Well, who knows?
How does one let that go?
Who
You've
knows?
Been so involved.
But my time in elected politics is over.
Yeah, but many other ways to serve, and we hope that you will do that as well.
I'm sure we'll continue to see you as well, and thank you for your help in Burlington
of course.
and my time as council president these last few months.
Yeah, all right, great. Thank you. That's Kurt Wright from Burlington's New North End. We are going to go to Democratic headquarters. Jim Condos, Secretary of State, is going to talk about the high voter turnout. So.
We're back at the Hilton, and I'm joined by Secretary of State Jim Condos, who is running for another term. Welcome. Thank you so much for talking to us here at Channel 17.
Thank you for having me here.
So there has been a lot of talk about voter turnout. I was at the polls in Winooski and Essex Town and Essex Junction today, and I experienced what seemed to be like a good voter turnout, but I bet you can talk to that more statistically and
So we don't have actual numbers yet, and it'll be a few days before we do. But what we understand is that the turnout so far has been somewhere around 55%, which might be a record for the midterms. Just if you look at early vote ballots, in 2014, the last midterm, we had 33,400. This year, we're up to 69,000 already.
Wow, so that's double what was collected previously. Any other thoughts about what's happening to bring out the voters or voter engagement? What's working?
Well, I think there's several factors. One, of course, is the national discourse that's going on. But I think also you have some highly contested races at the local level, at the county level, and even at the state level.
And I know the other thing that you care deeply about is voter integrity of elections and security of elections. So want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. So we've had a good day, and to say that when I can say nothing happened, that's a good day. So we're very pleased. Obviously what has occurred around the country did not occur here. There have been instances where there was some voter suppression going on. We feel pretty confident that the voter engagement has been strong, and that we've protected the right to vote, and we've protected the security of that vote.
Well, great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight.
You're welcome.
We'll look forward to seeing more results as they come in and hearing more about Vermont's hopefully record-breaking turnout for this midterm.
It's a good night so far.
Terrific. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Back to you in the studio.
And that was Barry Silver with Jim Condos, the Secretary of State for Vermont, talking about the overwhelming turnout, perhaps record-breaking turnout, and the reason why our results are coming in a little more slowly than we would like. And I'm back here with Lauren Glenn.
Well, you know,
Thank you, Lauren Glenn.
I mean, I'm not sure if Kurt mentioned this, but the huge Democratic turnout would have an impact on all Republicans, even moderate Republicans.
Yeah, and he talked, you know, basically about the idea of the sort of the toxic atmosphere at the higher levels that definitely affected voting for Republicans or not, and as the case may be. So yeah, certainly this big turnout has something to do with it.
And you know, we're looking at some interesting races that, I mean, the Studio B folks have been talking about. They're very close. The governor of Florida, very close. So there's a lot going on. A lot of people have been voting. But here in Chittenden County,
you're at home.
So we're going to just do a little bit of a recap.
Yep.
So, you know, just so folks know, it's 9:30. We're still waiting for Ward 2 in Burlington, Ward 5 in Burlington, Ward 8 in Burlington, although we do have the numbers from Ward 8 on the school ballot. And we can talk about that, but there's a lot of gaps in the numbers. And so let's just say what we've got.
Where people can also find this information too, yes?
Well, they can find it here. I have to say, miles ahead of the Secretary of State's office.
Okay. So
ch17.tv. So just in terms of what we have, and even we're ahead of VPR and
Vermont
the
Digger?
AP results.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't checked Vermont Digger. If they're AP results, we've got numbers they don't have. So
So
that's
where do you want to start?
I'm so happy about that. All right. Well, Williston too. I think Terry McKeag and Jim McCullough
return.
Both Democrats are returning.
Joy Limoges does not make the cut there, by quite a bit actually.
By about 1,000 votes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they got 2,800, 2,900 respectively, and Joy Limoges 1,980.
And that's right up on the screen right now, so you can see that.
Yep, exactly. And then we're going to go to Jericho and Underhill, where Trevor Squirrel and George Till, who are both Democratic incumbents, they didn't face any opponents, and so they return. Mike Yantachka obviously returns. He was unopposed. And then in Heinsberg, we were watching this race with Bill Lippert, who's the head of the House Judiciary Committee. He was challenged by Sarah Toscano, who had some real concerns about the gun laws that were passed in Vermont, and so he has won at was a very healthy margin of 1617 to 700. The Shelburne, Kate Webb and Jessica Brumstead, of course, are unopposed. And then, of course, the big news we just had, the scoop, Kurt Wright announcing that he is also not going to be seeking the City Council President's race, in addition to not winning the House race. And Carol Odie, the big vote getter there with 2680, and Bob Hooper with 1999, and Kurt Wright fell short by a couple hundred votes. Gino Sullivan unopposed, Jill Kowinski and Kurt McCormick in the Old North End, District 6-3, both returned to their seats. We don't have numbers yet, full numbers for the Brian Cena, Selena Coburn, but they are returning, and the same with Joey Donovan and Mary Sullivan and Barbara Rachelson. So in Winooski, you had Seth Leonard on.
We had Seth Leonard on, and he told us that Deanna Gonzalez will go back. She's an incumbent. She'll go back to the legislature. Clem Bissonnette won that second seat, but he will not be taking that seat. And Hal Colston, who was the write-in, didn't quite have enough votes to get that seat. So now it's going to go to the governor, whoever he or she may be, and they will make that decision on who will be the second seat in Winooski.
Yeah, Hal fell short about 200 votes on that one. And that's hard because Clem Bissonnette is an institution.
He is, and also Seth also said they had a huge turnout as well, and trying to get a write-in candidate to get enough votes on such a huge turnout, that's really difficult.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also we don't know about, they had a housekeeping item on the ballot, but again, they're still counting those votes.
That was a school district, and so that doesn't go into the machine.
So
it's
we're not
hand
gonna see
counted,
that
so
for a
we
long
won't see
time.
that till
Yep.
tomorrow. In South Burlington, Martin Lalonde was unopposed, and he returns. And then Ann Pugh, she is unopposed and returns. And then the Frank Davis, John Kalaki race, John Kalaki won quite handily. So that is taking Helen Head's post at the legislature. I know John Kalaki's worked quite hard on that one and earned probably every one of those votes. Maida Townsend unopposed. with 1,700 votes for Burlington's District 7-4. Essex, we're still waiting for numbers, and we are waiting for numbers again for Colchester and Milton. The Essex-Westford race, the Robert Bancroft was unopposed, and we still don't have the Essex numbers on those. But let's just take a quick look at the Burlington ballots. Let's look at the way it's shaking out. Every ward has voted in favor of Article 1, the Burlington.
That we have in.
Yeah,
at
that
this
we have
point.
in,
Yeah.
yes,
But
thank
they're
you
the
for
big,
clarification.
but there are some.
These are significant
Yeah,
numbers.
because 4 and 7 tend to vote against things like school budgets and such. So the fact that they both came in pretty handily, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in Ward 4, it was
they're likely gonna
1791
pass.
to 1070.
Yeah.
Ward 7, it was 939 to 774, so the margins were much closer. Ward 3, 1803 to 523.
Wow.
Ward 6, 1844 to 584. So, you know, there are bigger margins in these. Ward 8, 1132 to 172.
Yeah, so this looks.
It's going to pass.
This is going to pass.
And
yeah.
it doesn't need 66% of the vote. And no one's actually explained to me why that changed, but it used to be that these kinds of bonds needed 2/3 to pass, but no longer.
Okay.
And then the revenue, the water, wastewater and
Stormwater,
stormwater, based on the results we have, it's a 90% yes rate on the wards that we have. So Burlington's feeling spendy, as they say. And that's $100 million in indebtedness that the city will be paying for quite a long time. So those, and then just in terms, let's just look at the state races.
Okay.
I mean,
as long as we don't take away from Studio B.
No, the countywide races. I mean, the countywide races.
Oh yeah, the Senate. Yeah.
So the state Senate.
Not everything is in.
Well,
But-
we're waiting for Essex and Shelburne. Those are both fairly significant towns.
Okay.
But what's interesting about these is that it looks like the incumbents, I mean, currently where we are now with, I could count and say how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 polling places out of 14. Yep, okay, there we go.
It's a little hard to-
Nice.
yeah.
Nicely done. So Tim Ash is, I think we have even more current numbers than that, is the front runner.
Yeah.
Followed by number
Debbie?
2, Debbie Ingram. This is, you know, again, these are
not complete.
incomplete
Yep.
results, but this is sort of the status of the horse race, as they say. Ginny Lyons is the 3rd most popular vote getter. Number 4 is Michael Sorokin. Number 5 is Philip Ruth, and number 6 is Chris Pearson. And the difference between Chris Pearson's vote and the 7 position, so Chris Pearson's got about 12,600 votes, and Alex Ferrell is in the 7th position, but he's got 7,300 votes.
Oh, wow.
So I would say based on that, it will be difficult for Alex Ferrell to gain
enough
enough votes to
and we're going to have
regain
him.
that position.
He actually is speaking in front of the Republican
Let's
headquarters.
talk to him.
Let's go to that. Let's go to Republican headquarters and hear from Alex Farrell, Republican
Well,
candidate for
tonight
state senator.
we've seen a lot of mixed results, and I think it's safe to say we still have a lot to celebrate here in Vermont. We talk about building the bench, and Jeff talks me up a lot, and I appreciate that because he's a buddy. But I'm not the only one. Casey Toof won his race in St. Albans. We've got Corey Parent in Franklin County looking very good. We've got Dana Maxfield, Paul Dame, a lot of young Republicans across this state that are looking great. And you know what? We're carrying this message all over. And not only that, but once again, in the state of Bernie Sanders, we have a Republican governor again. A Republican governor that we could be very proud of, and that has continued to work for people like me and candidates all over the state, and has taught us how to carry this message forward. And so as these young people like me, like Dana, like Paul, continue to campaign and try again, we're learning every time. We're learning what the voters of Vermont want to hear, what they care about, and we're learning, we're listening, and we're doing everything we can to deliver for those voters. So I can tell you right now, these guys aren't going to stop coming to the voters. I'm not going to stop coming to these voters. No matter what it takes, I will come back and back again to do what's right for the state of Vermont. And I'm thankful that everybody in this room, everyone in this party has embraced me. It has been overwhelming. Jeff talks about what this campaign was able to raise. That wasn't just me. That was the people around me talking me up, telling people about my ideas, and people believing in me. And that's absolutely amazing that this community, this party, people in other parties have embraced this campaign and our ideas. So what that tells me is We have a bright future, and this is just the start of a very bright future. Thank you, everybody.
And that was Alex Ferrell's concession speech at the Republican headquarters. We are going to go to Studio B to find out what's going at statewide and national elections. Gentlemen.
Okay, before you start on your national analysis, can I
Sure.
just say how one of the reasons I love politics is because Debbie Ingram in Chittenden County is the second place vote getter despite being incredibly quiet and shy, number one. Number two, a convicted, do I have that right? DUI driver, drunk driving accident, etc. Didn't hurt her at all. And I know her to be an incredibly hardworking, dignified senator who does a great job, but it's just the quirk of politics that, you know, she rams her car in an accident and she's the second place vote getter.
About a year ago, she was driving on the roads of Williston with her constituents 2.5 times over the legal driving limit, the drunk driving limit, crashes her car. There's a video of her not even being able to stand, and she just kills it on election night. I think it's stunning.
Stunning. Anyway,
yeah, so
the United States of America. Go ahead.
So electionbetting.com says that the Republicans have a 98.4% chance of holding the Senate. And Indiana has just, from your point of view, Indiana has fallen. The Republicans have won that. Florida has fallen. There's Tennessee has fallen. It looks like the Republicans are going to pick up a significant majority in the Senate. However, and this is the game changer for the dynamics of national politics for the next 2 years. It looks like the Democrats are going to take over the House. Fox News has predicted it. NBC is calling it. ABC is saying it's 55% chance of it. So there's going to be a new reality, and subpoenas are going to start flying. Pelosi has promised to issue subpoenas and use subpoenas as a bargaining chip with the White House to try to get policy concessions.
Yes.
Which is illegal, by the way.
So, not that that's ever been a standard of behavior for this White House. However, you're right, subpoenas will fly. I don't think impeachment proceedings will happen because I think Nancy Pelosi understands that that is a bridge too far. But we're going to see, here's the key thing when a chamber of Congress changes hands. Civics 101 for all you young people out there who have not read your Constitution. When the House changes, the chairs of all the committees change. So now, the House Appropriations Committee, where all the money is spent, is now going to be in the hands of a Democrat. Mm-hmm. The House Ethics Committee, the House Intelligence Committee is going to be in the hands of Adam Schiff, the representative from California, most likely. Mm-hmm. No friend of the president's. So, as I said earlier, Peter Welch from Vermont stands to be in leadership in a major way, if not a committee chair.
Peter
that's
Welch,
where the change happens.
And Peter Welch, Congressman Welch, has been, from the day he got to Congress, the leadership of the Democrats recognized his abilities. He's a very personable guy. He's very competent. He's very good at what he does. And he represents the state well down in D.C. And I think that he's going to be rewarded with a significant post down there.
Right. So how does this change things? Does it hurt Trump or help Trump?
So there's a couple different schools of thought on this. Obviously, there's going to be difficulties moving legislation in a situation like this where one party has, the opposite party has the House. Trump has said that he is perfectly willing to compromise with the Democrats in the House to try to achieve legislative passage on different issues. I don't know how the Democrats are going to approach it, I think that it could end up helping Trump in 2020, having someone to run against.
I agree. He's certainly going to blame anybody but himself for this. So he's going to blame Paul Ryan. He's going to spend the next 48 hours blaming Paul Ryan for this or somebody else. Certainly not Trump's fault. And he'll take credit for the Senate win.
Well, I just think that this is a reality of a first-term president. There's no one to blame for this. It happened to Reagan, happened to Clinton. Barack Obama lost 63 seats in 2010. 63.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot fewer seats lost. I think that Trump doesn't need to spin this. He can look at it as a victory.
Yeah. Gillum, the African-American candidate for governor in Florida, has lost, correct?
I don't know if anyone's called it as a loss.
Okay. And Twitter is on fire with people talking about the so-called Bradley effect. And those of you who are old enough will remember that the former mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, was coasting to victory in the governorship there against who I can't remember, and then lost. And everybody talked about the Bradley effect, in which voters were unwilling to tell pollsters that they were going to vote against the black guy. And that has forever been known as the Bradley effect, and now everyone's talking about this in the Florida race.
They may be, but and we talked about this dynamic earlier. No one I know has a home phone.
I agree with you 100%.
And we know who's calling us on our phones. We're bepelted with robocalls all day. So I don't know anybody who answers a phone without knowing who it is on the other end.
Yep.
So the chances of a pollster getting through are slim to nil. And the people who were willing to answer the phone and walk through a poll, I mean, I think that skews the results of anything that they get. They don't want to admit it, though. They do not want to admit it because their careers are over. But they got it terribly wrong in 2016, and they got it wrong on this cycle, too.
So back to Vermont for a second.
Yeah.
I think we're going to break for the victory speech of Attorney General T.J. Donovan. One word about that. This is, I haven't seen the numbers, but I think this is a massive victory for the Burlington homegrown T.J. Donovan. This is, people don't talk about him a lot, but this is the golden boy of the Vermont Democratic Party tonight, in my view, because he's next generation.
Mm-hmm.
He wants Pat Leahy's seat, or he wants to be governor. I think he wants Pat Leahy's seat. I haven't talked to him about it, but he's in the perfect position to be one of the next sort of titular leaders of the Vermont Democratic Party as Pat Leahy moves toward the end of an illustrious career.
TJ got delayed from taking this office because Bill Ferrell didn't know when to leave.
Who? I've never heard of Bill Ferrell. You and he are good friends.
He's currently residing in the where are they
in
now
the fly
file.
fishing
Yeah,
stream where he
that's
dropped
right.
his phone, thanks to you.
That's right. He accidentally dropped it in the river and wasn't able to retrieve the public records from it. But that's another story. But but I do wish. I think TJ is set up. He's got a great foundation. I wish he was a better champion about open government.
Right.
But that's my pet peeve, and I think it's a pet peeve for a lot of people. But he's got a good machine out there. He knows. You were talking earlier about knowing how to run statewide. He knows how to run statewide now. And I wouldn't be surprised if he threw his hat in the ring very soon for the next cycle for governor.
He's a good tactician. He's incredibly ambitious and incredibly hardworking. And put aside the transparency issues, he can run an attorney general's office.
And he won our family over in my town of Charlotte over when we had people doing home invasions. He personally came out and conducted a town meeting. He knows what he's doing.
This is, to me, this is the issue of the future, which is, can government function or can government not function? And Republicans win when they show citizens that your government is screwed up and doesn't function. And Democrats have to say government, it can be efficient and it can function. And tonight, Senate voters are saying, you're right.
Well, I disagree with the prism with which you're looking at government, but we'll see what happens in Vermont, and it's going to be an interesting cycle.
We'll talk about Tennessee the next time they come back to us, where Marsha Blackburn, one of the most conservative people I've ever met, is the winner.
Have you been to Tennessee?
Is the winner of a Senate seat. I was married there. We had our first child there, and my first job in journalism was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I've seen Marsha Blackburn over the years, and she just beat a former mayor of Nashville and a former governor for a Senate seat by locking arms with Donald Trump, and I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. It's incredible. So, okay, where are we going next? Back to TJ Donovan's victory speech.
All right, well, thank you, Vermont. I am grateful for your support for another term as your Attorney General. And let me first thank my wife, Jess McLeod, my son, Jack, and Emmett, who have been with me the whole way. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you, guys. Let me thank a great campaign manager, somebody from the southern part of the state, from Bennington County, Natalie Silver. Let me thank my family. I know my mother, State Representative Joey Donovan's here tonight. We want to thank her as well. And I want to thank everybody in the Attorney General's office for their hard work over these past 2 years, carrying out a new agenda, working to help Vermonters, to give voice to those that don't have a voice, to be creative, to solve problems, and to stand up and protect every single Vermonter in this state, regardless of who you are, where you're from, what you look like, who you love, or who you worship. We protect civil rights in the state of Vermont. That's what we're going to do these next 2 years. We're going to stand up and protect everybody, whether it's the civil rights or whether it's women's fundamental rights or whether it's our environment, because pollution doesn't know any state borders. When Washington, D.C. will step back, the state of Vermont will step up and protect all of us. And I've always said that the best form of public safety is a good job. And we've worked very hard these past 2 years, reaching out to the backbone of our community, and that's our small businesses. In order to grow our economy, we have to redefine what a safe environment community looks like for everybody. It starts with access to health care, early childhood education, good public schools with robust mental health treatment, affordable housing, and access to affordable higher education. That is the foundation of a safe environment community for everyone in this state, where we leave no one behind, where we believe in the dignity of every person and give everybody the opportunity for success in Vermont. That is Vermont values, that is Vermont strong, and that's what we're going to continue to do as Attorney General. And know this, no matter what happens in Washington, D.C., we believe in justice in this state. We believe in dignity. We believe in respect. And we believe in the human rights of all people, regardless of the hateful rhetoric that comes from our nation's capital. We believe, as the poet wrote so many years ago, that when justice can rise up, hope and history can rhyme. Let it rhyme in this state in these next 2 years. This is Vermont. These are our values. Let's continue to lead this nation in decency, respect, and the respect for all people. Thank you so much.
TJ, T.J. Donovan with his victory speech at the Democratic headquarters in the Hilton in Burlington. We are going to recap results. We don't have anything new to offer, I'm sorry to say, but we've had an overwhelming turnout here in Chittenden County, so our results are going to be delayed. But we're going to run through our results. We'll start in Burlington. We have an upset in Burlington in Chittenden 6-1, which is the new north end of Burlington, wards 4 and 7. And we have Kurt Wright has lost that seat. It's going to go to Carol Odie and Bob Hooper. And Bob is the non-incumbent over Kurt Wright. And Kurt Wright had been there for many years, so that is definitely an upset in Burlington. And there are the numbers. Carol Odie, quite a large number, 2680. Robert Hooper with 1999, and Kurt Wright with 1833. And Kurt also told us when he was here that he will not be running for re-election for city council in 2020 as well. He's actually going to be leaving politics. We'll go to Winooski next. That's Chittenden 6-7, and Deanna Gonzalez will go back to the House. Clem Bissonette has won that seat, but he will not take that seat. Hal Cohen didn't win enough votes in his write-in campaign, so the final decision will go to the governor, whoever he or she may be. We'll go to Williston. That's Chittenden 2. Terry McCaig and Jim McCullough, the Democratic incumbents, will both return to the legislature. Joy Limoges did not have enough votes to win one of those two seats, and you can see that. We've got Jim and Terry at 34 and 32% of the vote, and Joy Limoges at 23%, and Kathleen O'Ryan at 9.5%. So the incumbents go back. Ballot items in Burlington preliminarily have passed. We still have about 4 wards, I think, or so that have not reported. There is a problem with the ballot counting machine in Ward 2, so we suspect that's going to be a while. But the way they look right now, it would be difficult for them to fail right now. They only need a simple majority. So the Article 1 is to approve general obligation bonds for the high school capital improvements. That's a $70 million bond, and it passes pretty handily right now at almost 70%, and we do expect that to pass when the rest of the wards are in. The second ballot item is for the stormwater, wastewater improvements. And again, this is even a bigger, almost a 90% vote yes for the $30 million stormwater and wastewater. Chittenden, we should say Chittenden also 4-2. Bill Lippert, the incumbent Democrat, will go back to the legislature. Sarah Toscano was not able to take that seat. And that's in Heinsberg, and there's those numbers. And finally, preliminarily, Chittenden County Senate seats. Alex Ferrell has conceded. He did get the 7th slot. There are 6 seats in the Chittenden Senate delegation. It looks like all the incumbents will likely go back, although not all the towns, again, are in yet. So right now we are going to go to Mayor Weinberger. Moreau Weinberger, Mayor of Burlington, is going to talk about the ballot items at Democratic
So
headquarters.
I am joined by Mayor Moreau Weinberger, who is going to tell us a little bit more about a couple of, I guess, unprecedented bond votes in Burlington. There was a bond for renovations at Burlington High School, and then also wastewater treatment and other infrastructure. So tell us what you know about that now, and yeah, just inform us a little bit more about those issues and anything else you want to tell us.
Great. Well, yes, there were 2 very significant bond votes. Bond question number 1 was about up to $70 million investment in a renovated and largely new high school. And then there was a separate bond item for $30 million in investments in our wastewater and stormwater systems. And it does appear that both bonds did very well. I was just a few minutes ago out at the high school with the crew that's been working hard to secure a yes vote there, and their unofficial results were that about 70% of the city had voted in favor of the investment, which is it is a historic vote. We have not had really any substantial investment in the high school in about 55 years. So this is really a exciting opportunity for our high school students. Generations of Burlington high school students in the years ahead will benefit from this investment. The wastewater bond and stormwater bond, we don't have final results for yet. I did see the numbers out of Ward 6, and there about 94% of the voters had voted yes. So it does seem very likely that that passed with a big, strong outcome as well. That too, maybe not quite as significant as the high school vote, but it is, for the last 75 years, Burlington has been really doing better and better at protecting Lake Champlain. Up until 1953, we didn't do anything to protect the lake from sewage. Since then, we've had a number of rounds of major investments. We built a wastewater treatment plant, the main plant, in the 1950s. In the 1990s, we started treating stormwater, which was very significant. 2009, we started a stormwater utility that kept things getting even better. This $30 million investment, I think, goes along with those other big steps that, in some make us far better than we used to be at protecting Lake Champlain. And this investment will really ensure we don't go backwards and that things don't break the way we saw happening multiple times this summer.
So when you're saying it's less significant than the high school bond,
well,
it's just
it's
in
not
terms
as
of
large.
dollar figure.
Yeah, it's not as large a number. It's not, it hasn't been in the same way that it's been 55 years since we really made a major investment in the high school. We've been making investments more recently than that, but it is still a very significant day for Burlington's water stewardship, lake stewardship efforts.
Great. I think we'll just wait and see what happens when the final numbers come in, and I appreciate your talking with us and giving us the heads up about what's happening in Burlington, and thanks again.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate what Channel 17 does to be a definitive source for local news during these exciting election nights. So thanks for your service.
Thank you. Unsolicited and testimonial. That's awesome. Have a good night. Thanks. And back to you.
Thanks, Barry. That was Barry Silver at the Hilton in Burlington with Mayor Merrill Weinberger. It looks like both of the ballot items in Burlington have passed for both the high school construction and the stormwater, wastewater improvements. As you know, as we've been telling you all night, we had a very big voter turnout, and as such, the results are coming in slowly, we're sorry to say, but we've given you what we've got, and you should keep checking our website for ch17.tv for results, and we will post them as soon as they come in. We are going to go to Studio B, where Kevin Ellis and Brady Tensing are going to talk about the national scene as well as the governor and lieutenant governor's race here in Vermont. Gentlemen.
Conservative, Trump-linked candidates won in the Senate in Florida and elsewhere, and
Indiana.
Yep. And
Tennessee.
It looks like and Tennessee. It looks like
Manchin held on.
And Manchin holds on in West Virginia.
Yep.
Because he, as you say, voted for Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah, well, West Virginia is a state that went 40 points for President Trump. 40 points. And Manchin's vote on Kavanaugh, I think, saved him.
And yet the House goes Democratic, at least we think. I haven't heard it. Well, yes, NBC and Fox have said so. So Nancy Pelosi's going to be Speaker of the House. So can you please explain to me how the Senate goes Republican and the House goes Democratic?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
I can't understand that except the dynamics of these local races. These gerrymandered districts.
Thank you, Tom DeLay, 2010.
Well, I'm no fan of Tom DeLay, but what the state, you can't change the state's borders. So maybe that's the reason. It's the gerrymandering, and I don't know how that gets fixed or whether it needs to be fixed or what happens with it, but I think that's the explanation.
One thing we haven't talked about at the Vermont level tonight is the lieutenant governor's race, and it looks like incumbent Democrat independent David Zuckerman is going to win that race. It's 53-46 at the moment, with about half the precincts, half the vote in over Don Turner. So I don't think anyone's called it yet.
Yeah, I'm not ready to call that yet. No one's given a concession speech. With half to come in, I guess it depends on what hasn't come in.
Yeah, I think
Zuckerman's going to be strong in Chittenden County. If that's already in, then
Some of it's in, Burlington's not in, and he's at the farmer's market selling his vegetables every Saturday. So I suspect that he's going to do very well in the rest of Chittenden County. And I think he is a much overlooked statewide candidate. And if he can figure out how to make a living while running for governor, I think he'll run for governor in a couple of years.
yeah, we'll see. I'd be surprised if he. I was surprised that he won statewide office.
Me too.
In this,
He's probably watching right now. He argues with me all the time about marijuana legalization. So
yeah, I'm no fan, and
I'm not either.
I know he's a big proponent. But if you have, we talked earlier about incumbency and how powerful it is in Vermont, and how difficult it is to unseat an incumbent. And I don't know if a lieutenant governor incumbent has ever been defeated, but the time when they're most vulnerable in Vermont is in that first election. So now that opportunity, if there was an opportunity to beat him, is past, and he's here probably to stay.
The opportunity has passed unless he makes a major mistake. I think the last one to lose, again showing my age here, is Jim Milne. Not Scott,
Really?
but Jim Milne from Barry. I'm sorry, he was Secretary of State, and he lost his first re-election bid to Deb Markowitz because he didn't really like the job, and
People could smell
It
it.
was so clear, yeah, it was so obvious.
He doesn't like walking in parades and sign waving? I can't understand
Much preferred
that.
golf at the Barry Country Club, which I don't blame him.
Yeah, I can't fault him for that.
Zuckerman has a movie series, which everyone laughs at. Like, oh, he's got a movie series? Yeah. You know what that is? That's getting email addresses.
Is he doing folk singing on it?
No, but he shows movies. So, okay, we're going to send it back to Studio A.
Great. Thank you so much, gentlemen, in Studio B. And I am joined right now with Jane Nodell, City Councilor from Wards 2-3, Districts 2-3 in Burlington. And Jane, tell us, the ballot items look like they're going to pass by a huge majority, yes?
Well, I think everyone was pretty confident about the water.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Because people were upset about the unintended discharges and so forth.
Yep, which has
so
been
we
really
weren't
bad.
really
Yeah.
worried about that.
Yeah.
I think we thought that the schools would be tougher.
Yeah.
Because it is a big number. But we should keep in mind that those tax increases are because they're part of the state formula. There's some income sensitivity there,
Yep.
which will help people afford it. Okay.
But now income sensitivity doesn't necessarily, I mean, there's no promise this is going to be forever though, right? I mean, this is like a 30-year bond or something, right?
Yes.
So at some point the legislature could say, hey, there's enough money to do this. We're not going to do this anymore, Burlington. We don't really care about the fact that you want income sensitivity, right? I mean, we're not guaranteed 30 years of the numbers that they put out. Is that true?
Laws can always change
So,
at the
okay.
state level.
So
at the state level.
That's a fear.
But I would assume that now that we have elected a lot of Democrats to Montpelier,
Yeah.
that they will understand that they need to meet their obligations.
Okay.
You know.
All right. You heard it here.
And they need to meet their obligations. So I think that's a great win. There was a lot of debate actually in the city council.
Yeah.
If you asked me in July, I would have predicted that it was going to be a very heavy lift for them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of councilors and the mayor, and including myself, we were kind of saying, do you really have this plan together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we really know how the finances are going to work? Are we confident in the tax impact predictions? And to do their credit, they did a lot of work. We sent them a slew of questions. They answered those questions, and they said, give us more questions. And so that was very helpful. What was also helpful is that on the city side, we developed a debt policy. And it went through a couple different iterations. I thought the initial versions were a little bit too inflexible. But we ended up with something that's going to be very prudent, but that also will allowed for this very significant investment. But we need to understand that once we do the high school, that we're very, very close to our debt capacity.
Okay.
There's some room for some bonding for memorial,
Auditorium, yep.
Memorial Auditorium, but Councilor Wright, who we saw earlier, has raised a very good point, which is, shouldn't we be looking at Memorial in terms of that whole block? Okay?
They call it the super block?
The
Do they call
super
it that?
block.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that might, especially with some of the uncertainty around City Place. Okay.
And we will talk about that too. Yeah.
Okay, that is a block where that is a development that could be basically driven by the city, where we're, because it's our properties.
Right.
Okay, for the most part, there's some private property in there. We just need to work collaboratively with those owners,
Yep.
And we can drive that bus. We don't have to wait for somebody in New York City to decide that they're ready to invest in us. So maybe it's time to think about that memorial site. I think a little bit with a bigger, in the context of the whole block.
Now, is that difficult though with this debt burden that we have coming up here? It sounds
Well,
like
I think what you would need to do, you need to try attract some private investment.
Okay.
But maybe there's some, Vermont property developers that, I think would be very interested
Yeah.
in doing something like that. It's a more manageable scale, I think, for Vermont Capital.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about Kurt Wright's race. We're all quite surprised.
Obviously, I supported him. I was on his literature. I've always supported him. He has been a big support to me. I value the balance and the diverse. I really think we need to hear all voices to make good decisions. I worry about one party rule. I worry about that now, like more and more that in Burlington, with there used to be a lot of healthy tensions, right?
I remember those days well.
Progressives and Democrats, and progressives would work with Republicans. I think that was very healthy. I think we did a lot of good things in that world. And so I think he'll be there another year and a half. That's good.
Yeah.
And he was like a one-man show really with that campaign. A few people helped him, but he was like one man against an army. Yep. That was determined to take him out, and unfortunately, due to a confluence of conditions, it was not his night. But he served well, and he's a very good legislator. I mean, it takes a certain type to know how to listen to both sides of an issue, to listen to the other people in the legislative body, find compromise, work together, trust, be trustworthy, be clear in your positions. These are all things that Kurt is very, very good at.
Yeah. So Kurt will not be returning legislature, but Bob Hooper will be
Yep.
taking his seat.
Yep.
So, yeah. So let's talk about City Place.
Yes.
Yes. Where do we begin?
will get another. President Wright has asked for another update at the next council meeting, which is November 13th. And there's been a lot of discussions, I trust, between the city and Mr. Sinek's town, that is Burlington Town Center, and then I think also with the investors in New York City. And
Who
hopefully
are 51% owners, right?
at least. I mean, they'd be more than, yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully they have some progress to report other than, we're still at odds. And, I was talking to a Free Press reporter yesterday about this, and I said, we need to keep in mind that the three parties, that is the city, Sinek's and his company, and Brookfield, all want the same thing. We all want a successful project on that site.
Yeah.
And
do we agree on what a successful project is?
Well, we may not.
Okay.
I think we may be in a place where we're thinking about whether we have a successful project with varying levels of confidence in that.
Okay.
But the economy is changing. I think that interest rates are rising. That's changing. That's going to change the economics on these kinds of investments.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I'm just my view is let's all remember that we all want the same thing and try to take a little bit of a cooperative approach as opposed to like fighting each other and going to our lawyers and saying what can we do to hurt them.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Because we have a big hole in the middle of downtown now too.
And that was exactly. And look, when we were the council was working on the pre-development agreement, right? Whenever that was, many years ago, that was when Newport was going down.
Right.
And we're all saying the last thing we want is a hole in the ground. And we built in all kinds of protections into the development agreement. And I wouldn't say we're in a Newport scenario, but something needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need to get a sign of some forward progress.
Right. Well, and I think the fear also is that some of the tenants who needed to move in by some certain date, because
Yes.
that's when they need to vacate their other location,
Yeah.
that they're going to drop out. And some of those were pretty significant, is my
Right.
understanding, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a priority to at least get a first phase
Yeah.
underway.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Jane, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
I know you've been working on
Thanks
the
for having
results.
me.
We appreciate that
I'm
as
going to
well.
go back to the back office.
The results office and
Yes.
see if you can beat some more information out of somebody. All right.
Huge
thank you.
turnout. That's exciting to
Yes.
have so many people vote.
Gotta love it. Good. Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Diane.
Okay. We are going to go to the BHS Register. That's the high school's newspaper. We have an interview in our exit voices with the editor, I believe, of that newspaper.
Welcome back to the Burlington Hilton. I'm joined by Julia Shannon Grillo, who is a student at Burlington High School and on the team of the Burlington Register. You're a student journalist, is that right, Julia?
Yeah, I'm one of our 4 editors at the BHS Register.
Editor, good for you, okay. And you were out this morning interviewing voters, getting a sense of what was on their minds when it came to these midterm elections. What did you learn?
Yeah. Well, you know, we were asking people sort of what they felt passionate about, those on the ballot, and we did get a lot of people who were talking about how this election meant a lot to them on more of a national level than local, but also we did see a lot of support for the school bond and for the wastewater sewage bond.
Right, so there are 2 big bond items on the ballot in Burlington, and the school bond would allow Burlington High School to add on and renovate. That's pretty exciting as a high school student. I imagine you've got some opinions on that.
I mean, I've seen the plans. I just wrote an article about it for the Register. I've seen the plans personally. I'm jealous that I wouldn't be able to go to that school, but I know a lot of the students in the school do see the need, and we, the people who are in the school right now aren't going to be affected by it, but nobody wants the future generations of Burlington High School students to have to loop through 4 different buildings because one ramp is raining in the hallway. So.
Well, you certainly know how the current school is in it. Just doesn't work anymore. Maybe it never worked.
Especially this time of year when the weather starts to get bad, we really see the effects of the deteriorating infrastructure at the school. So,
well, great, thanks. What else did you learn this morning?
I don't know. Like I said, a lot of people. We got a lot of response from people who are looking at the national scale today, and people seem generally pretty optimistic. I think when we talked to people, they were riled up and they were excited, and there was a huge voter turnout. I was in Ward 6 first this morning, and they said they had a line out the door right when the polls opened, and they had never seen that before, and it was the same thing with Ward 5. And I believe I heard that there were lines when the polls were closing too, so they had to keep them open. Which usually doesn't happen, especially in midterm elections. So that seemed like a pretty good sign for everyone, and people were in good spirits.
Well, great. There's definitely a lot of optimism in this room, so we're going to let you get back to the party, and thanks so much for checking in with us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Take care. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Barry. That's Barry Silver at the Democratic headquarters at the Hilton in Burlington. And we have about 2/3 of the precincts reporting for the governor's race. At this point, it looks like Governor Scott will be returned to the governorship with about 58% of the vote, and Christine Hall Quist 38%. Again, that's only 2/3 of the precincts reporting. We have an overwhelming turnout in Chittenden County and throughout the state. So our results are quite delayed. We're trying to bring you whatever we have, but that's what we have at the moment. However, with that information, Christine Hallquist is making her concession speech at the Democratic headquarters at the Hilton in Burlington, and we're going to bring you
everybody.
that speech, and here it is.
I am going to be very brief. I am here to introduce a person who put herself out on the line, traveled every county of the state over and over again, spoke to people at the county fairs, spoke to people in living rooms, spoke to people at rallies, and didn't just speak to people, but also listen to people. Christine Hall Quist did an amazing job in her bid for governor of the state of Vermont. And we got to give her a big round of applause while we welcome her to the stage here in Burlington, Christine Hall Quist.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for all of your support. It's been an amazing campaign. I've shed a lot of tears of joy for the people that have approached us over the past several days. It's been quite amazing. And I'm very proud of the campaign that we have run. I called Phil Scott to congratulate him on his win. Phil, you know, Phil is going to be very committed to the future of Vermont. I'm proud of how we've worked with each other. We sparred well, and I think Vermont is a beacon of hope. We showed the rest of the country what good democracy looks like. And as I've said all along in this race, you know, I'm standing on the shoulders of thousands of Vermonters before me who fought for what is right and what is just, and we will continue to fight for what is right and what is just. I'm going to tell you one of the more beautiful stories that I saw in the campaign. You know, on the primary night, I was up in Island Pond, and this big burly man came running across the parking lot, and I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. But he ran up and he says, oh my God, I thought you were going to leave without me saying hello. He says, I am so proud of you, and I'm so, you know, happy with the work you're doing. I just wanted to shake your hand. So Vermonters all over, we are a welcoming and inclusive state, and I love Vermont. And this campaign was truly a labor of love. It was a real demonstration of the love we all have for each other. And let's make sure we continue this in front of the headwinds that we're facing today. Well, let's continue to show the rest of America what good democracy looks like. And I certainly want to thank my family for their tremendous support. I want to thank Pat, my spouse. Jillian came here with a bunch of friends from San Francisco, worked hard. My son, Derek, Kirsten, I'm very proud of my family. And I want to thank my awesome and incredibly intelligent and committed staff. Cameron, Aaron, David, Logan, Will, Teddy, Brenda, and so many others. Grace, all of you have worked so hard, we're never going to be able to replace what's in my heart right now. So I want to thank every volunteer and every donor who's helped out. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And we all will continue to strive to make a better Vermont, and nothing is impossible when you're on the side of justice. Thank you so much. Thank
you.
So, as we said earlier, it looks like Christine Hall Quist is going to get about 39% of the vote, maybe more. As I said earlier, we used to say that a dead Republican in Vermont gets 40. This is a shellacking. I mean,
Yeah,
this is a shellacking.
So
First
Republicans
time candidate, lots of rookie mistakes, huge lack of money.
Well, but that's progress, right? Because no one cared what her gender was. They cared about the policies, and I think she should be happy that no one cared. I mean, she got some benefit from it and got some money that a challenger of an incumbent would not have gotten in Vermont, and she was able to get enough money to spread her message, but wasn't enough to unseat Phil Scott. Not even close.
Not even close.
Because you start 10 points down as a Republican.
Right.
Maybe that evens out as an incumbent, and so then she just couldn't make any headway on it. There was no reason for people to vote out Phil.
Unlike Lawrence Zupan in his concession speech to Bernie Sanders, she acquitted herself fairly well.
She gave a great concession speech, classic concession speech.
Yeah. So we now have on the national scene, we see the Colorado governorship, the Kansas governorship just went Democratic. So we're going to have a Republican Senate. We've got states moving blue in governorships, and we have a blue, I think, House, although that's not official.
Well, the number of news outlets are calling it.
Right.
And but the most important House from the administration's point of view is the Senate, because that is where you can confirm cabinet posts and confirm judges.
Take away my daughter's health care? Yeah, exactly.
They want to give your daughter more choices at less cost. And guess what? You can keep your doctor, Kevin.
Right, right. I've been keeping my doctor. I've had my doctor since 2008.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is the price that the Democrats paid for 8 years of Obama was to lose tons and tons of legislative seats at the state level and governorships. I mean, there was an amazing, I think it was 36 Republican governors at a certain point, and I think that people react to...
The Democratic Governors Association met in a bar in Washington, D.C. There were 18 of them, I think. It's ridiculous. Now, I'm no expert at redistricting, but governors going Democratic does mean that after the census is done, that some of these redistricting maps can be more favorably drawn to Democrats.
Yeah, that may be.
Right.
Although some of that's been challenged.
Right.
And there may be pushback on that, more pushback than before. The courts are taking a harder look at it and asking legislatures and governments to justify the gerrymandering that they're attempting.
How do you figure that the Republican candidate for governor in Kansas gets shellacked by a gun control Democrat? It's just crazy.
I don't understand. I certainly don't have my finger on the pulse of the dynamics of that race. But.
As we were saying earlier, though, I think it has something to do with Phil Scott in Vermont. You can see Phil Scott on the street in Vermont getting a sandwich pretty much any day you want. And that's what's great about living here, and that's what's great about politics here. The access is so good. And I think governorships are that way. I think they're somehow more personal. We see Senator Leahy here as kind of up here, Democratic royalty, whereas you see Phil Scott on the street getting a sandwich. And I think that's that way in a lot of states. It's a more personal office, the governorship, I think.
Well, I think it's a disease that happens to anybody who goes to the Senate. They start to think that they start to develop a saunter and a certain tone to their voice.
Right.
But on the governor's level, yeah, I think that Phil is approachable. I think anybody who called up the governor's office and asked for a meeting with him would probably get one.
Absolutely.
And probably without much delay. And I think that's one of the things that appeals to people about Vermont.
When I was a reporter at the Burlington Free Press, I used to call Madeleine Kunin at her house when she was governor to comment on stories.
Yeah.
And then I'd call Dick Snelling at home, and he'd scream at me.
What time did you call?
I was always late, and Cunin didn't like it either. Neither of them liked it, but it was I couldn't believe it. I had to ask my editor several times. He'd say, call Cunin at home for comment on X, and I said, well, really? Can you do that? Because when I was in Tennessee, you didn't call. Back then, it was Lamar Alexander.
Oh yeah,
who was the governor of Tennessee when I was living there. You didn't call Lamar Alexander at home. But that is still, Howard Dean's number was listed in the phone book. We still have, I said earlier that Trump has effectively changed the game, the chessboard and the game of politics, along with the internet, along with all the things we've talked about. And yet those norms and guardrails seem to be holding in Vermont.
They're holding, but there's definitely been impact of these of social media on our races. But yeah. I mean, if you go down to Montpelier while it's in session, you could get any legislator you want to have a meeting with you and talk to you about those issues.
Yes.
I disagree with a super majority of them.
Yeah.
But they certainly would hear you out.
Oh, big news, which we haven't talked about. The Speaker of the House, Mitzi Johnson, has retained her seat. Her seatmate, Ben Joseph, who's a Democrat, lost his seat. So that's a one-seat gain for Republicans. So I'm not sure where we are in Democrats gaining their supermajority. But
right.
So Mitzi Johnson is going to come back. She's going to be Speaker of the House. She's the former chair of the Appropriations Committee. She is a graduate of the Kennedy School at Harvard and is a policy wonk with the best of them, and she believes this strongly, that committees do the work and they should be entrusted with the power to do the work, and she tries to leave them alone as opposed to other speakers who run the House from behind closed doors. Mitzi's a very open speaker, so it's going to be really interesting to watch the triangle of Tim Ash, Mitzi Johnson, and Senate President Tim Ash from Chittenden County, Mitzi Johnson, the Speaker, and Phil Scott.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll go on a retreat before the session starts.
So now you talk about changing the chessboard. That would be the right thing to do.
Yeah, they probably will do it.
Yeah, and you know what? They ought to do it. This is my new thing. In a Trump world, we need politicians who are going to do things differently, and I think that's a great idea. Do it privately once, and then do it publicly. Sit there, have the TV cameras in, sit at a table, and say, okay, how are we going to do what's best for Vermonters? I think it's a great idea, actually. A little corny for us cynics, but, say what you want about Beto O'Rourke. I don't know whether he's winning or losing.
I think he's losing.
But one thing he did, and if I were to run for governor, he lost. God, the guy ran for 19 months, and he lost. It's a lot of work. My point is, if I were going to run for governor, the first thing I'd do would be to commit to visiting every town in the state to prove that you really give a damn about the state. He did that, lost anyway, but your idea about the three leaders of Vermont sitting down and having a powwow, it's a really good idea.
They're probably already making phone calls to each other.
I hope they do.
But if you look at Texas, in the Beto race, that affected a lot of down-ticket races in Texas. That impacted that, and I'm looking forward to reading the analysis.
Me too.
Of how of what happened there, and how it changed things in Texas. It's going to be fascinating.
So your president survives.
He wasn't on the ballot. Of course he survived.
I think he was big time on the ballot, and I think he did survive. I think he won.
Oh, he won in all this hype about a blue wave.
Yeah.
Not when you compare it to what other presidents have suffered in a midterm, and I think you have to concede that if you're looking at this, to pick up seats in the Senate.
Yeah.
to increase your buffer. It may be 54 seats to 46.
So as depressing to me as that is, I find that to be, and I don't think this story is going to be written, at least for 48 hours. I agree with you. Trump should have, it's so easy to, everyone hates Trump. He's this, he's that, he's this.
I
He
don't
should
hate
have
Trump.
gotten trashed in this midterm election, and he did not.
He, according to conventional wisdom,
right.
I mean, everybody loved Obama, right?
Right.
He lost 63 seats in the House.
63 seats. And this guy loses, I don't know, 23, give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Maybe 30 seats. So you need 22 to get the House. So, no, 23 to get the House. And so maybe they pick up +7, +8. I don't know. It'll be late. We don't have any California information yet. But to be able to pull that off is pretty remarkable. And if you look at the economy, if people are looking at their paychecks.
I call it Obama's economy, but
yeah,
whatever.
I know. I'm sure you do. But whatever trajectory it was on when he left office it's gone on an upward trajectory, and I think it's a favorable. The tax bill, the regulations that have been removed, and they've made it favorable for business. You can't underestimate the power of the bully pulpit from a president, and he's been using it. And you may disagree with it, but he's been using it to good effect for business.
Okay. Studio A, take it away.
Thanks so much, Brady and Kevin. We are going to do a recap of the results for you as they're coming in. Do you want to start us off, Lauren Glenn?
Well, we have some results from Colchester.
Okay, some new results.
So I'm happy about that.
Okay, great.
So Colchester has state reps. They don't share a state senate with Chittenden County, so that's Dick Mazza returns to
no surprise there
for their person. But state rep Kurt Taylor, I believe, was the incumbent, if I'm correct. Seth Chase is the number 2. So they take the top 2 seats, and Desiree Morin and Clark Sweeney do not.
So the two Democrats.
Two Democrats.
Yep.
And then that's in District 9-1.
Okay.
And then in District, and then it looks like the ballot question, which had to do with the Colchester schools selling and conveying some land, passed quite handily.
Okay.
On a scale of 6-1. And then in District 9-2, Pamela Ranger was not able to gain one of those 2 seats. Patrick Brennan retained his seat, and Sarita Austin is the person who is taking Maureen Dakin's seat. So Patrick Brennan had 1842 votes, and Sarita Austin 1741.
So Republican and Democrat.
Yes, and Herb Downing and Pamela Ranger did not make the cut.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what we have.
That's for Colchester.
Colchester. So now we're going to do a recap of the results that we do have.
Okay.
And you want to take it from, we're going to include the contested and uncontested races.
Okay.
All right.
So we're going to do the whole thing. Here
Let's
you go.
start from the top.
Deep
Here we
breath. Okay.
Go ahead.
Good. We're going to start in Richmond, and we've got 1 seat, and it looks like the incumbent Marcia Lawrence Garda, Democrat, will take that seat, keep that seat. There it is up on the board for you. And then we're going to go to Williston.
Williston, Joy Limoges was not successful in capturing her seat. She lost by a much bigger margin this year than 2 years ago. Terry McKeag and Jim McCullough, both Democrats and incumbents, return, and Kathleen O'Ryan didn't really make a showing as an independent and keeping the seat warm for Trump supporters.
Jericho Underhill, that's 3. We have Trevor Squirrel and George Till, who will both return Democrats to the legislature.
Mike Yantachka, who serves Charlotte and Heinsberg, is an incumbent, and he is returning unopposed.
And Heinsberg 4-2. Bill Lippert, the Democrat incumbent, will keep his seat. Sarah Toscano was not able to make much of a dent there, so Bill Lippert returns.
In Shelburne, we don't have results yet from Shelburne, but we do know that Kate Webb and Jessica Brumstead have been reelected because they were unopposed.
Okay.
And Burlington, the big news.
Upset. Burlington 6-1 in the New North End. Kurt Wright does not retain his seat. Bob Hooper, a Democrat, wins that 2nd seat. Carol Odie returns the Democratic incumbent.
And we're attributing that to a big wave of Democratic votes.
Yep.
And Kurt also announced some other big
Yes,
news here tonight.
That's right, that in 2020 he will not be returning to the city council. He'll not run for city council again. This is going to be his last year and a half at the city council. He's going to be out of public service,
Well,
or elected public service anyhow.
He served a long time, and you know, it's nice to have a balance of power.
That's what Jane Odell was saying too. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's never good to have one party too much in control. It's not good hygiene, I don't think. But in any event, that's not what everybody thinks, and I'm not here to tell you what I think. I'm here to tell you the results. So, Gina Sullivan in District 6-2, which is the new North End, she's unopposed and she wins. And in the old North End, Jill Krawinski and Kurt McCormick return for District 6-3. They're both Democrats.
Okay, we're going to actually take a break from our results because David Zuckerman is making his victory speech.
Thank you.
At the Democratic headquarters.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Treasurer Pierce. Man, she has become quite the rabble-rouser, hasn't she? Go, Beth! Thank you, Vermont Democratic Party. Thank you, Vermont voters. And thank you, Dawn Turner, for running a positive and respectful race. We are very lucky here in Vermont. We are very lucky here in Vermont. I shouldn't say lucky. It is with intention that in Vermont, civility and respect across different perspectives and different issues is held. While we watch negativity take over all across this country, we had races here in Vermont that were positive and respectful. And I thank my opponent for that. This race was about the issues, and Vermonters spoke very clearly that we want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Vermonters said, we want to clean up the waterways of Vermont. We don't want to keep punting that down the road. Vermonters said, renewable energy matters because climate change is real, it's not a hoax, and we have to address it now. We cannot continue to use fossil fuels the way that we have been. Vermont sent a message that affordability is about putting more money in people's pockets. Raising the minimum wage by 50 or 60 cents an hour puts over $1,000 a year in their pockets. That's a whole lot better for Vermonters than any $20 or $30 tax break. It is very clear what Vermonters want. The people in this room know what Vermonters want. The people across the state know what Vermonters want. And we're ready to go down there and give them what they want. And I'm going to introduce the next speaker, who's already been a speaker, is going to be speaker again, and is going to lead a new House of Representatives with tremendous victories across the state. I first knew Mitzi in college. We then farmed together in South Hero over 20 years ago. It is an incredible pleasure and honor for me to introduce our returning speaker, leader of the House, Mitzi Johnson.
Tonight is a really good night to be a Democrat. Excellent. Where are the House members? And the Leahy Fellows. Where are the Leahy Fellows? Tonight, voters across Vermont are sending a really clear message that we need a state that works for everyone. These are a handful of the people who have made all of this happen. across the state. Through some very generous support, we had a series of Leahy Fellows across the state working hard, field organizing, supporting candidates, and having conversations with Vermonter. Thank you so much. We have a fantastic Vermont House Democrats campaign director, Jim Dandino. And between Jim and the next person I'll mention, we fielded the largest slate of candidates than we've ever seen, and we are seeing the results tonight. And that hard work of developing those candidates, encouraging those candidates, raising funds to support those candidates, and getting so many of them across the finish line, so much of that gratitude goes to Jill Krowinski. Jill is a rock star majority leader, and with all of this work, we have very good news about growing that majority this year. We see all these wins, but we also know that there's a lot of work to do yet. Christine Hall Quist has my and our deep and eternal gratitude. Christine ran a fantastic campaign. She put her heart and soul out on the campaign trail, and she really used her space to really bring a lot of awareness about working families, about rural economic development, and about the inequality of opportunities around the state. And for that, we are very grateful and look forward to continuing that work as we move forward in the next section. So thank you, Christine. Two years ago, many of us were here in this room together when we saw the political climate in Vermont shift drastically. For the last 2 years, we've had a president who creates toxic divisions, who disrespects women, who disrespects people with disability, people of color, victims of sexual assault and harassment, our veterans, and the list goes on and on and on. He believes he's above the Constitution, which is the foundation of our nation. He systematically dismantles public confidence in our free press, and he eggs the deep divisions and systemic racism that tear our country apart. And tonight, Vermonters fought back. Together, with all of your help, we sent a message that hate has no business here, that Vermont is not for sale, and that we need a Vermont economy that works for all of us, not just a select few. You all know that Vermont is the best place to live, raise a family, work, grow a business, and we have to do everything we can to make sure that that Vermont dream is accessible to everyone, from a good, strong start in early childhood to a retirement of safety and security and dignity. And we've got a lot of work to do in the next session to make sure that happens. In the last session, you all know the record number of vetoes that happened that helped to keep people away from that Vermont dream. Tonight, Vermonters said
that's not what we want. You need to listen. We need to make sure to include everyone and raise all boats. So I want to just give my personal thanks to every candidate that ran, every candidate that changed the story in their community, every candidate who helps people understand why we need to build a stronger, healthier future in Vermont. And this team up here is just a part of the team that you're going to see working together with you to make a Vermont that does work for everyone. And I look forward to seeing that through with all of you and serving Vermont together over the next 2 years. Thank you very much.
Up to where, Lauren Glenn?
We are at District 6-4, Brian Cena and Selena Coburn. I'm not sure we have the complete results, but they are incumbents that are unchallenged.
Okay.
And in 6-5, Joey Donovan and Mary Sullivan, and also in the South End, Barbara Rachelson all returned to their seats. Let's talk about Winooski.
Burlington and Winooski, that's 6-7. There's 2 seats. Deanna Gonzalez will go back. She's a PD. Clem Bissonette also won a seat, but he will not take that seat. Hal Colston was not able to win as a write-in candidate, so that race will go to the governor to decide.
Exactly, and the Ward 1 results aren't in, but those numbers are not that significant. We don't think. We're not sure, though.
Okay.
So I would not call that
Don't
race.
take it to the bank.
I
Okay.
wouldn't. South Burlington.
We have Martin Lalonde will go back and Pugh will go back. They both are unopposed. 7-3, that was a contested race.
Yes, and John Kalaki performed quite well with 1,600 votes, 1,653 to Frank Davis, 435. And then Maida Townsend is for District 7-4, returns for South Burlington. We do not have the Essex numbers yet, but we have enough to know that Robert Bancroft will be returning for the Essex Westford seat, unopposed. And then we have the Colchester seats, and we have Seth Chase and Kurt Taylor going as Democrats for District 9-1, and Sarita Austin and Patrick Brennan, the incumbent, going back for District 9-2. And Milton, we don't have those results yet that we are aware of. So let's look at the ballot questions. We don't have wards 1 and 7, but we have enough to know what's going to happen with the city of Burlington.
Because they're really quite overwhelming.
Yes, why don't you speak to that, Diane?
So we have Article 1, that's for the bonds for the Burlington High School capital improvements, and we have that right now at somewhere between 71 and 73% yes. So that's and I think the mayor has already said these are both going to pass. So we also have Article 2, which is the wastewater and stormwater utility improvements for $30 million, and that passed by, I mean, right at this moment, 91% with 2 wards not reporting, but that's going to happen. So,
exactly.
Yep.
In Colchester, the authorization Article 1 to district convey a land parcel to the town from the school passed,
Okay.
86%. The Richmond Town Plan passed with 81%. And in South Burlington, there is just go, go, go for moving the municipal structure to the TIF district, to convey the land to the school, for the school to take up that land, and
most importantly,
and to authorize the city to combine stormwater bonds also.
I was thinking also that this is their city center. I mean, they're going to be their
Yes.
new municipal building, community center, et cetera. So that's a big one.
And this is 75, 70 to 80% of the
big.
city voted in this way. And Winooski, it's still a hand count on the question of whether the school should change the time of their meeting and have the authority to do that.
Essentially as a housekeeping item, yes.
We
What do you
do
got
have
here?
the Winooski finals, so why don't you
We have
just...
the final numbers for the House District in Winooski. So we have Deanna Gonzalez with 1,824, Clem Bissonette with 1,184, and Hal, who don't forget, Hal Colston, this was a write-in, 875. I mean, that's a pretty impressive number for a write-in.
It is.
And we talked about with Seth Leonard, the mayor, that there were so many ballots in that it would be very difficult for a write-in candidate to be able to attract that many votes.
Exactly.
So those are the finals in Winooski.
All right, I think that we are safe to call the state senate race,
Let's
even
do it.
though we don't have Shelburne and Essex in. And Tim Ash is the top vote getter. Debbie Ingram is number 2. And I'm not saying that this is going to be their final post
Yep.
positions, but the incumbents are returning.
The 6 incumbents will return.
And that's pretty clear. So why don't we just leave it at that and say that the reason that I'm convinced that that's true is because the gap between the 6th and 7th position is so significant. We've got Chris Pearson with 18,000 votes and Alex Ferrell with 9,000, half the number.
Yep.
He can't make that up.
Right.
So the incumbents
But
return.
but the interesting news is that Alex Ferrell is in 7th position. We were wondering if that would happen or not. So I think
Yeah.
we haven't heard the last from him.
Exactly, and he said that during his speech.
Ah,
Yeah.
there you go.
And then finally, the countywide results. The probate judge, Gregory Glennon, Judge Glennon returns. He handily is beating at 5-1 margin. Bill Norfolk, who decided to run as a Republican, and in the side judge race, Suzanne Brown is proving to be the most popular with Connie Ramsey.
She's a new candidate.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they won the primaries, the Democratic
True.
primary, and Charlie Delaney and Zachary York did not make the cut. So, without further ado, I just want to thank you so much for being with us.
It was a pleasure.
And
Thanks for all your hard work.
And thanks to Kevin and to Brady Tenzing, Kevin Ellis and Brady Tenzing, to Shay Totten, to everyone who has worked to put this together, to Kim Vilmer, our executive producer, Megan O'Rourke, who is running the show tonight, and Kevin, who is directing, and
reporters out in the field.
Unbelievable reporters out the field, the results
help.
crunchers, and we have some remarkable people here.
You do.
And we beat AP and the Secretary of
All
State
right.
on our results,
Excellent.
which makes me
We
quite
are very
happy.
proud of that.
So without further ado,
we're going to go to Phil Scott's victory speech at the
governor.
at the Republican headquarters, and that's going to wrap up our show.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thanks for watching.
Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. First of all, I want to thank my family, especially my wife Diana, and my daughters Erica and Rachel, my mom, who came all the way from Florida to see this event tonight, and many other families around the room, family members who have given their love and support to me, and I wouldn't be standing here today without them. So thank you very much for being here. You know, throughout my life, whether it be in business or racing or politics, I've been able to bring people together who have the right attitude, the right chemistry in order to be successful. So I'd like to thank my team right now, both my campaign team, who worked the long days that became even longer nights, and if they could just step out here for a minute, I'd like to thank Brittany. Come on up, Brittany. Jason. Where's Jason? Corey. Come on, Hazel. Where's Hazel? What's really amazing is this is our core. This is the 4. They brought it home, you know. The average age of these 4 is about 25. And 3 out of the 4 are either going to UVM or graduating from UVM. So we have a lot to be proud of. As well, on the official side, I want to thank my cabinet and the staff who stuck with me through thick and thin. I'm blessed with an incredibly talented team, so loyal and so bright, who have spent the last 2 years working to make the vision that we share for Vermont a reality. Now, I look and I know we've taken tonight off. We'll do that. But I look forward to continuing our work. So for all of you, we're going back to work tomorrow. And we'll start again the next 2 years. So tonight, 180 Vermonters were elected to serve as our legislature for the next 2 years. I want to personally congratulate each and every one of them. Some are here this evening. Maybe you could raise your hands if you're here and were elected tonight. Thank you very much. And I look forward to working with you in the coming months. And work being the key word because there's so much to do. There are few higher honors than being elected by your neighbors. For them to have enough faith and trust in you to represent them and their interests and be the person they're counting on to work on the issues that are most important to them and our communities. And there's no greater responsibility than working every day to understand how to solve the problems we face as a state. For those newly elected, like I was 18 years ago, you may still think everything is black or white, yes or no, but I would warn you, there's a lot of gray in between. Typically, there are no easy answers, no corners to cut, only hard work ahead to do all we can do to create a stronger, more vibrant future for all of us. In electing a governor of one party and a legislature by another, the message Vermonters have sent to us tonight is clear. Work together. Vermonters are saying they want us to work for them, not against each other. They are saying we need to listen to one another and prove to the rest of the nation that in Vermont we can and will rise above partisan politics. We must come together for the future of our state in order to strengthen our economy, make Vermont more affordable, and protect the most vulnerable in all 251 communities across the state. Whether you're from Brighton or Brandon, Albany or Alburg, we all want the same thing. We want the kids in every community to get a great education, learn a trade, pursue the career of their dreams, buy a home, start a family, and retire right here in this state. This is the challenge we face together. And tonight, I humbly accept that challenge once again. I also want to thank my opponent, Hall Quist, for stepping up and running an energized and historic campaign. While we may not have agreed on many issues, we did agree from the start that this race would be about things we felt mattered to most of the people of Vermont. While across the nation, other races in other states turned negative and uncivil, in Vermont, we rose above it. The news out of Vermont this election was clear. We can disagree, we can debate, and we can do it with passion, but in this state, we can do it respectfully. It wasn't perfect, and at times we were reminded that we're not immune to the hate and bigotry that are all too present across the country. But by and large, the campaign was marked by the type of civility Vermonters and Americans, for that matter, deserve in the public process. There was probably no better example of this than Zach Mayo and Lucy Rogers of Cambridge, two candidates ending a debate last month by sitting together to perform a musical duet. For this, and for stepping up and putting yourself out there, I'd like to thank all the candidates tonight, win or lose. From the top of the ticket all the way down, it's not easy to put yourself out there. So I thank you for your contribution to the conversation and commitment to making Vermont a better place. I'd also like to note that the issues that have been raised in the campaign due to Christine's historic candidacy are front and center. I want you to know that as long as I'm governor, I'll continue to make sure our state lives up to our motto of freedom and unity, as well as our reputation of tolerance and compassion, by being the most welcoming state in the nation while defending all Vermonters from hate and bigotry. This will remain one of my administration's top priorities, no exceptions. Today, Vermonters spoke loud and clear. So tonight, I'll reaffirm my commitment to the three principles on which my administration bases every decision that we make on a daily basis. First of all, we must continue to make Vermont more affordable. I travel the state every day. I see the struggles our neighbors face. And I know that the high costs of living and doing business, energy, healthcare, education, and taxes are forcing too many to look elsewhere for opportunity. We should all find that unacceptable. So as I've done for the last 18 years, I'll spend the next 2 working to reverse these trends. Second, if we're going to grow our economy, we must bring the workforce in, and we must attract more people in order to do that. We need more kids in our schools, more workers for our businesses, more proud first-time homeowners right here in Vermont. We need a bigger labor force to support the public investments that we care about. Because if we can't grow our economy, then we're faced with 2 options: raise taxes or make cuts to programs which could harm the most vulnerable, neither of which is acceptable. That's why I asked legislators, in fact, all elected officials, to work with me on a plan to grow our workforce, to increase our working age population, because our future literally depends on it. Third, we're going to protect our neighbors. We'll continue to address our opioid crisis, those suffering from mental health issues, and find ways to make sure all Vermonters have access to affordable health care. We'll take care of the elderly and our veterans who have given us so much, our children and those who need us most, when they need us most, because it's what we do in Vermont. And finally, if we're going to accomplish any of this, we must continue to rise above the partisanship and politics of hate and division. Our time to make a difference for those who have elected us is far too short. We can't allow ourselves to fall victim to pettiness, political games, and angry rhetoric. Now more than ever, we must be better role models, because our children are watching and they want to be just like us. We must be better, kinder, and more respectful to each other, and take time to listen. This is the challenge ahead. This is my vision for our future. It is the greatest honor of my life to have the trust of Vermonters to carry out this work on their behalf. So I thank you again from the bottom of my heart, and as I've done throughout my entire life, I will do my very best not to let you down. So thank you very much for having me here tonight.